I was amazed by the journey you've had. What is the origin of all of this? Firstly, the name. That was very interesting.
In the late 2000s, there was this whole fad on the internet. A lot of people used to address each other using variations of the word bro attached with other words. Saint Broseph in particular is that friend in your group who will always come through and will always help you out no matter what. He's the saint of the group. I came in and I started to help people out in my own capacity. All it took was one person, one with the right kind of initiative. Really start to give people hope that there's someone out there who will come through and help us out.
I'm assuming social media has played a big role in your life.
It just changed me fundamentally as a person. It turned me into somebody who felt like I had to be the one to do what was required in any given situation to help somebody.
I really found out last night how big you are on Reddit. I had no idea.
A lot of police stations do not take FIRs because they want to avoid having to work. So I'm not like somebody who's an anarchist and I hate the police or something. I really respect the police officers, at least the good ones, that are out there trying to make a difference in their own little way. Culturally, we were never a warring nation. We were never a barbaric nation. Of course, we were not very nice to a lot of our own people. But at the same time, we never went out of our way to disturb anybody else. Indians need to realize that you are up against everybody. And everybody has vested interest in making sure that you as a country don't succeed.
Dushyant, thanks a lot for doing this. I can only imagine how busy your Saturdays must be, given that what I saw in the office yesterday when I met you for the first time. And the conversation since then to now has been so organic. It feels like I already know you for a very long time. Yeah. So that's really, I think, going to help this conversation from here on. When I was going through your career and I was looking at what you've done, I was amazed by the journey you've had. One of the things that really caught my eye is how sharp and into technology, internet, etc. that you were, and from there the kind of career you had, and then to doing what you're doing now. It's a fascinating story. What is the origin of all of this? Where did this all come to be? Very keen to know.
Thank you, first of all, for having me. It's indeed an honor to be able to share my experiences and my story on this platform, on your show. And I'm really glad you found me worthy enough to be a part of it. So prior to doing the social work that I do now, I had a pretty extensive career in digital marketing, essentially all forms of marketing. It really began at a young age. Like, my father was somebody who played a big role in influencing the aspects of my personality or my life that you spoke about. So my father, from I think in the 90s itself, he figured out that technology was going to be the next big thing. So he brought a computer for his office and he really encouraged me to use that computer, and there used to be an actual position, like a job role known as computer operator back then, right? Yeah. I mean, the people who've been around since that time around computers would remember that. DTP operator, computer operator, these people used to, these were the job roles back then. So there was one such computer operator and employed by my father, and my father used to make that person, tell that person to also teach me stuff. So I developed an interest in computers and computing, and I ended up making websites, in the late 90s, with the help of that person and my father, and developed an interest in technology. Got into marketing at a very young age because I started to get freelance projects online for different kinds of marketing tasks. And then, that's kind of how the professional side of things grew. But relevant to what I do now specifically, it was again from both my parents, actually. Both are really kind people, and particularly my mother is genuinely somebody who's very kind, very sweet to everybody. And my father was someone who was very charitable. He literally had a nursery, like a plants nursery, which he started for. And one of the major reasons for starting it was to raise plants that could be donated to school children to encourage them to think about the environment and plant more trees and, all that kind of stuff. So my father really had an impact on me. I would see thousands of students coming into this nursery of his and taking plants for free. And, so on World Environment Day, he would go to schools and distribute coupons. And for each coupon, there would be a couple of plants that he would give to the students for free. So, it was quite impactful for me at a young age to see that my father was doing something purely out of a desire to help the environment or help inculcate a sense of preserving or conserving the environment or planting more trees, things like that. So he was somebody who used to think in this way, and that definitely had an impact on me. He was charitable in other ways, also helped out a lot of people in his circle, in the society. He came from nothing. So unlike me, who was raised by my father, who was, I didn't really have any problems growing up financially. He was somebody who really struggled. So, but he made sure that, we understood that. And, me and my brother, we understood that. And we didn't get carried away by the fact that we don't have problems. So it was, quite a good influence early in my life, I think, to have. And that sort of started the whole thing off.
Right. So at what point did you start your first job? What year was it?
So that's an interesting story because like I told you, I was already freelancing from a young age.
Yeah.
And again, my father is somebody who's a pretty radical thinker. So his whole thing was he didn't really like the way the education system was. And once he realized that I was doing well and I already had some sort of a career because I was, doing quite a bit of digital marketing and I was doing well for myself. I had my websites and we used to have advertisements on the websites and it was a good business and I did well for myself. And I told my father that because I was in a boarding school, it was really difficult to manage my websites and everything from there. I told my father that, it's not really working out. So either I won't be at this boarding school anymore. I need to come back and do this regularly or, I don't really see a point in continuing to go to school.
Right.
Even though I was pretty good at academics, like decent, I would say, not really phenomenal, but 90% that category. So my father was very much on board with that. He said, since you already have a career, I don't see why you need to get just pursue college, school, things like these every single day to then get a degree to then, because that trajectory is for people who want to find a career after they've completed their education.
Yeah.
So since I already had a career, he actually supported it and I was allowed to drop out. So I dropped out, I completed 9th and I dropped out. And then after that, I did complete my education because you have to in India. And there's so many things connected with a bachelor's degree or, that you really need to. So I completed my education through open school and open university, and fairly easily. But I spent that time instead, in furthering myself into my profession and also getting into charitable things, into social work. So the foundations into sports. So a lot of who I am is because of that decision that was taken at the time. And I'm really glad and fortunate that my father supported it.
Right. So what age did you go into boarding?
I was there in 8th and 9th. Okay. So, around that time. And so basically so I was already doing my work part-time. And then once I dropped out, it was full-time. So around the age of 15, 16 was when I started to work full-time on my own endeavors, on my own websites and my own firm. And then the actual first job that I got outside of that was when I was 20, I think. And that was in Mumbai. So yeah, the marketing career sort of
took off from
there.
You didn't finish your school?
I didn't finish it in school.
Okay.
Yeah, I finished, but I finished my education.
Understood.
Yeah.
So
10th, 12th, everything. So there's this wonderful thing called National Open School, which is for people who don't want to go to school or cannot go to school for some reason, but still want to complete their education. So you can select the subjects you want to give the exam in. And there's a certain minimum number of subjects that you need to appear for. And you have to submit your assignments. And I think they have some very, very basic requirements of attending the teaching sessions. And after that, you sit for the exam, and as long as you've prepared well, you can get through. So,
right. Would you recommend that to people today?
Oh, absolutely. I think now with the amount of teaching material that's out there on the internet, parents there's two ways to look at it, right? It's the actual education and it's also the other things that come with the school, which is socializing, meeting other children, actually having that kind of development. So I feel like both things are necessary. I think the actual certification that you passed and having that education is important. And simultaneously, the socializing is also important because I know people who've been completely homeschooled, who have absolutely no,
Social skills.
Yeah, they have no social skills. They have no way to, they get very awkward when it comes to interacting with people. I made a very conscious effort to make sure I interact with people. So I got myself involved in, various sports circles. Like I was doing sports, I was boxing, I was powerlifting, I was going to the gym. So I met a lot of people. And simultaneously, I also had an interest in, music. So I used to play the guitar and, I was in a couple of bands. So I met a lot of guys, people my age at that time. And that ensured that I socialized and didn't really fall behind on that marker. So I would definitely recommend the open schooling option to people. But, as long as they get socializing alongside it for their children.
At one point, I remember I really hated going to school. And my dad would say that if you want, there's an option of not going and completing education. I was like, but I'll miss my friends.
Exactly,
I really wanted that experience.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's what I take away from Indian education.
Absolutely.
I think that was the biggest plus that I had. The fact that I could mix with different people from different backgrounds and make friends. I think that was really essential. And that I think helped my communication as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the biggest thing schools give you. Because I ask all entrepreneurs who come here especially that did education help you or no? And then they have most often than not say that it did to a point, but beyond that it was us or it was whatever the inner flame that they had that, sort of went on from there to help them do whatever they're doing now. So I think that's the case with most people.
Absolutely. It's incredibly important for for holistic development. I think very holistically, a person at that age, especially those years, you can consider them the formative years of any person's life. So the entire personality that you will carry with you for the rest of your life, majority of it at least, comes from those years. So how the child develops, what kinds of influences exist in their lives at that time, what kind of people they interact and socialize with, I think it all plays a very foundational role. I think, of course, you're going to build on it as you go in the future, but it's important in that age to have all the right, ingredients to lay the foundations of a solid personality. So I think even when a parent or a young person asks me this question, I say open school is great because it allows you to have a little more control over those aspects. How you want to socialize, who you want to socialize with, which circles you want to get involved in. I got myself involved in sporting circles, because I was competitively pursuing a sport at that level. So it was great because these people were incredibly disciplined. These people were, very, very driven. So I took that from them. It's like, that saying, like you're the average of the 5-6 people you hang out with.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes.
Yeah, exactly. And it does make sense because you are going to pick up things, from these people, and especially in those years. So when I'm seeing these guys work out so hard at the gym, I have no option but to try and match them, So it definitely helps, having the right kind of, and like I said, at a school, perhaps you don't have as much control over the kind of people you end up spending your time with. With this option, I think I had a little more control over that, and I could choose like, okay, in this category is where I'm going to go and socialize, like people who are specifically involved in this stuff, So especially when it comes to the Indian education system, in I think other countries, you get to have that choice within the school itself. But here it's like everyone all together at once and everything. So it made a difference, definitely. And I think, but I honestly have to say that if I did not make that attempt to socialize, it may not have been such a great, outcome. So it's all important, man. All of it is important. There's a reason why it works. The schooling system also, for all its flaws, it does produce somewhat, like socially very solid people. And, people tend to, of course, like so many people become successful after that. So it's not like it doesn't work. It does work. It has its merits. But I feel like, there are other ways too. Yeah.
What is your sport? What is your number one sport growing up?
Initially, I was not at all a sports person. So then I felt so... Because I think I was a little delayed when it came to physical development. So I was always the shortest kid in class and the weakest kid in class. So initially I wasn't in any sport. I won I think I won first place in sack race. I remember back in the day. But that's only because I had a bigger sack and I could run more freely. So that was my secret. But later I got into boxing. Nice. I think primarily because I was tired of getting bullied. So got into boxing thinking, okay, this is going to help me with like beating up the bullies. But, I discovered it was a much deeper sport than that. It's almost meditative, and extremely strategic, and it calms you down so much.
Yeah, absolutely. What age did you pick it up?
Around 14 years.
14. I started at 18.
Yeah. Those are all good times to get into
Yeah.
it. And it was just so cathartic, man.
Yeah.
The release, like just being able to, punch, get punched. Next time, learn to avoid that punch.
And the first time you ever get punched.
Oh man,
At
especially
sparring,
in the liver.
right? Yeah. Oh my god. Even in the nose, the first time you get hit,
You get
and then
disoriented.
you realize that you're not made of glass. That feeling that you have is so powerful. It just, you can't explain to someone. You have
Absolutely.
to experience it.
When you take it and you know you can keep going.
Yeah.
After that.
Absolutely. So yeah, I can relate. I just took it up for out of hobby, or because a lot of my friends went and they came back and bragged about it. I said, "Oh, I should try it."
Yeah.
And I went, and it was a crazy experience.
Great experience.
Yeah.
Of course, there's like the sport in itself, it can get like very dangerous for certain people,
for sure.
head trauma and stuff.
Yeah.
But as a sport itself, it's a very beautiful sport. I
Yeah.
feel
In
like.
fact, I think back the time when you did it and when I did it, amateur boxing still had headgear on, right?
It still does. Yeah, it still does.
I thought it was taken off.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought because a lot of reports came in of how that's actually bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between pro boxing and amateur was mainly the headgear, right? Among other things.
Yeah, that's what we used to do.
Yeah. So then they took that off, is what I was told. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
The point, I mean, the headgear at least gave us a sense of security about like getting hit and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I remember, back then boxing, getting checked by like more senior boxers. It also really, if you think you're a tough dude, it's going to like bring that down very quickly.
Humility.
So,
It really teaches you humility.
Yeah. And then you learn to respect people. I think
100%.
boxing is a sport where you really learn how to respect another person, because you can get humbled by a very unassuming looking person just because they have superior skills, reflexes, speed.
True.
You can get humbled by a boxer like 20 kgs lighter than you, and it's very easy for that to happen. You can get humbled by somebody who you would not perceive as some kind of a physical threat, and above all, it rewards strategy. I think it rewards strategy, it rewards creativity, it rewards keeping a clear mind, it rewards a healthy lifestyle. Like in boxing, all these things, I think these were my, like, besides whatever accolades I might have won there, the main things I learned from that sport were these, to live a healthy lifestyle, clean lifestyle. The fact that it gives you such a quick advantage, like let's say you don't smoke and someone who smokes is boxing against you, it's a immediate advantage in your favor. So I learned a lot of things about healthy living from boxing as well. Pretty good influence early on. And then the sport that I really took up after that, which again I think shaped a lot of me physically and mentally, was powerlifting. So powerlifting, for those who don't know, is a sport that combines 3 lifts. So it's squats, bench press, and deadlifts. So three different lifts. You get 3 attempts at each, and your total is what you're scored on. So I got into that sport pretty early as well, because I was advised by my coach to bulk up. So I looked up online, what was the best way to bulk up, and it ended up being this, like, if you get into powerlifting, you need to do some of these workouts. So I got into it, and I remember going to the gym, man, like the first day, even despite being a boxer, right, being pretty fit otherwise, I went to the gym and I was lifting the bar like on the bench, and I was surprised at how heavy the bar was. I was like, why is this empty bar so heavy? Why can't I lift it? Or rather, am I struggling to like just press this empty bar?
Yeah.
And I was a kid, I was just 16 years old, but still it was quite an eye-opening thing for me to experience. And then I made it a thing like in my mind that I need to get strong, and not just strong, I need to become the strongest. And that's what I started to pursue after that, and very religious with my workouts, with my diets regimen at that time. And a lot of children, younger people nowadays tend to take shortcuts, and very unhealthy shortcuts.
Yeah.
So, that's something that I consciously avoided. I wanted to make sure that wasn't something that I did, because of all the health complications that came with it. And, of course, I just didn't feel it was the right thing to do. So never really did that. Always made sure it was all about hard work and, proper dieting, proper exercising. So I excelled at that. I think my body took to that sport like really well.
What is your PR in it?
In the gym, I've deadlifted 270 kgs. Yeah, that was my PR back in the day. Now I don't think I would be able to hit anywhere beyond like 200 or something.
Right.
But back then it was 270. I was very, very,
270
very.
is, yeah.
It was insane for me as well. I was
What age did you, I mean,
21.
yeah, you typically tend to be stronger in your early 20s anyway, right?
Because you have a lot more free testosterone as a male, and like at that time you can really bulk up and recover faster. The older you get, like the age that I'm at now, it's not, the recovery is not that quick, so it takes longer to achieve the same results. So 270 in deadlift. I have bench pressed 160 in the past, so in the gym. Squats were always my weaker lift. 180 is what I did in the gym, and like proper squats, parallel squats, not like just like going a little bit down and coming up. So I was quite proud of my lifts, and I did well. I won Mr. Gujarat in heavyweight powerlifting at like the junior level a couple of years, and that was quite nice. But then once I moved to the senior leagues, I realized that there were all these very medically enhanced monsters that I had to compete against. So I didn't really want to do that. So that's when I like just stepped away from the sport, because I don't like I can't take a sport seriously unless I'm competing. So otherwise it's just a hobby. So if I'm playing a sport, I play to win. Sometimes it's a little weird for people. Let's say I go play badminton, right, with some people, sometimes people get weirded out about how competitive I get, and it's just a sports thing.
Yeah, but that's ingrained in you as a child, right?
Yeah, as a sports person, If you played competitive sports early in your life, you're always going to get competitive when it comes to these things. People are like, why are you taking it so seriously?
True.
Okay, and then I say, okay, fine, I'll tone it down. But it was good. I think it was a good time. I think I spent those years doing some good things for myself physically. So it was nice.
So this is in Gujarat, right?
Yes.
So what's the culture of sport in Gujarat like? Because now there's talks of it probably being one of the venues for the Olympics, right? 2036.
Yes.
For most of the games, I guess, except a few exceptions. But what's the 2035 or something? I'm not sure. But what's the culture there like for sports outside of cricket? Cricket, I think, has always been big. What is like?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, Gujarat or Gujaratis, I should say, like the people from Gujarat, the culture of Gujarat is not a very sports-oriented culture. Like, so physical fitness isn't exactly something that you see popularly being discussed or promoted. I mean, at least earlier. Cricket, of course, has always been big, because if you think about the princely states of Gujarat, around Gujarat, those people have always been big, benefactors of cricket. Like, they've really sort of promoted cricket a lot. So even the Ranji Trophy is named after someone Maharaja Ranjit Singh Ji. So he was basically from one of those princely states. He was the king or whatever of that one of those princely states. And Ajay Jadeja is from that family as well. So, these guys, they really promoted cricket a lot because it was a gentleman's game. So it was kind of like their thing. And it allowed them to sort of interact with the British or something. So I think it was more of a colonial thing that they did. So they really promoted that sport. We always had good stadiums in Gujarat, I think, since the beginning. And but as far as other sports are concerned, I never saw much of a push for any other sports. Like, I remember, initially, at least, like I'm talking about the time when I was, a sports person from Gujarat. The sporting facilities were not that great, and the government was not doing much to promote sports. People were not into it either. But off late, of course, there's been a lot of change. The Sports Authority of Gujarat has really upgraded its facilities, and they are encouraging more people to get into sports. Now, the thing that is similar between Gujarat and, let's say, a European country is that the people have a lot of disposable income, or rather just funds. They have money. So their child does not exactly need to do academics as their full-time first thing. This is not true for everybody, but there's a very large section of the society that can afford to just let their child do sports. So there's that. The other thing with Gujarat is, because of the amount of money that's in the state and the funds that are available, if they make a football like pitch, like a stadium, for example, they'll make a really good one.
Yeah.
If they make a cricket academy, they'll make a really good one. You know, like everything's like very top tier there.
Right.
People seem to have this thing that if they're creating something, it best be the
Best.
you know, the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're really, whatever they're coming up with now is exceptionally good in terms of quality. And I've seen some football clubs there popping up now, you know, and not just now. Like I think when I left Ahmedabad, it was like around 8.5, 9 years ago. And even then there were a few football clubs that had been created, and they were doing really well. They had their own their own grounds, you know, to practice and play in. So that's pretty good. And there's no real shortage of land around Ahmedabad either. So, you know, it's quite nice. I mean, it's a good, I think it's ripe for, you know, like as a state, it's very ripe for, like getting into sports or like expanding it into sports right now. I think the mindset is not exactly anti-sports either. There are some states in India where the general population is very anti-sports, like apart from cricket, and they don't want their kid trying to pursue anything else. But I think in Gujarat, people take it a little more easy. So you would see more sporting talent from Gujarat in the coming years.
And I'm assuming this love for sport took you to Sportskeeda. You mentioned that you were at one point writing, covering combat sports.
Yes.
WWE was a big part of that. We bonded on that a little while ago.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Because you weren't trained to be a journalist per se, right?
I was writing. I used to write a lot.
Exactly. So you are sort of self-taught and groomed into that role. What was that journey like?
Yeah. So when I came to Bangalore, I didn't quite anticipate how expensive Bangalore was when I moved here. I didn't really move in with a job. I moved here because, you know, I just wanted to be in the Silicon Valley of India because I was in IT my whole life. So when I moved here, I ran out of money very fast. I think in a couple of months I was just out because I was just looking for a place. And it's tough to find the right place in Bangalore. I'd made the same mistake in Mumbai earlier when I'd moved into a random place and then I'd regretted it. So I decided to take my time, which wasn't really the best decision because I ran out of money and I was like, okay, I need to find some job. So a very good friend of mine, Sumit, he connected me with, because he was freelancing for Sportskeeda, so he connected me there. And those guys were very nice. I remember it being a very nice atmosphere, you know, and the most amazing part for me was I'd worked in like various companies and offices before, and I walked into Sportskeeda and it's like there are TV screens everywhere in the office and they're all like playing different sports, you know, and that was beautiful. Like I felt right at home, you know, as a sports person, former sports person at that point, I felt right at home. And it was a pretty good experience. I was always somebody who liked watching professional wrestling, WWE, you know, WCW, TNA, all these things. And that was fortunately the department that I got hired for. I was hired as an editor for the combat sports department. And I remember when I got my offer letter, it said combat sports editor. And I messaged the manager and I said, man, this is such a cool title you've given me, right? It was very nice. So I remember covering wrestling. I've always really been into UFC because of being a martial artist, boxing in the past. So really liked UFC from a very young age, and having the opportunity to cover it, you know, to write about it, to edit articles about it. It was really great for me. And
that was a peak, right? It was when UFC was blowing up.
Oh,
15,
That's
16,
when
17.
Conor McGregor was there, right? Khabib was just coming up. Conor McGregor was there. I think Jose Aldo was still relevant. You had John Jones at the peak of his popularity at that time. You had Anderson Silva, who was still very much in the mix of things. So there was quite a bit of MMA, you know, MMA was really blowing up. Like you said, Joe Rogan had started to blow up as a person, you know, as a personality.
True.
And it was quite a good time. And even wrestling, for that matter, I think was going through a transitional phase. So it had started to become a little bit hot again. That's when things like New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, these were doing really well.
True.
WWE was kind of forced to like come forward and get with the times. So it was
Launched
a very
NXT.
Oh yeah, NXT. Yes, that was the NXT era. I remember now. I mean, the sort of they redid certain aspects of NXT and Triple H took over. So those were some good times, man. And it was a very exciting time to be a combat sports journalist. And I think I had a good time at Sportskeeda. I think the 6 months or so that I was there, and then I freelanced for a little bit after that as well. It was a pretty good time. And you know, all my colleagues there, Anirudh, Leonard, you know, Pratyay, everyone was very sweet and very kind and, you know, accommodating. So
being at Sportskeeda, being at a company like that, where there were so many young, cool people, just covering sports and enjoying sports, I think it was a great welcome for me into Bangalore, right? Like, I imagine if I got into like a very high stress job right off the bat, I wouldn't have been able to get as comfortable with Bangalore as I did. So, credits to those guys for helping me settle in more ways than one.
Your love for boxing and combat sport, did you try anything apart from boxing as a mixed martial art? Anything at all?
So I have a great amount of respect for all martial arts. Right. So I personally, this is my own personal opinion, I would not go somewhere to fool around. Like I would not go and like try to wrestle with wrestlers or spar with jiu-jitsu people. I personally feel like it would be disrespectful. So I did not try. I unnecessarily, like Muay Thai guys, I don't want to go in there and like get myself clowned. So if I was going to get into something, I would have wanted to take the classes and like really start from the bottom and work my way up. So I didn't unfortunately get the opportunity to do that. When I was younger, I had these dreams, where I wanted to go to Thailand and learn Muay Thai. Like these were, everyone can dream, right? So I had these dreams, go to Russia and learn some Sambo, right? Go to Brazil for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I had those dreams, but obviously they were just dreams and there was no realistic way for them to happen. But, I have a lot of respect, man. Like I've watched all these guys. I've watched all these athletes. Of course, being a part of SAG, Sports Authority of Gujarat, I saw the wrestlers and the way they are, the way they roll and the amount of energy they spend on the mat, and it's insane. Like I think the closest thing I've done to, when I was a kid, I used to go to like an akhada and stuff, which is also wrestling, but they never because I was a very small child, so I wasn't really competing with anybody. I was just exercising with them. But man, the amount of stamina those people have, and just the skills, like they are agile, like how you see a honey badger or something, just they can pull anything off, out of nowhere. You're in there with them, and all of a sudden you're on your back and it's over.
I spent some time in Thailand, part of my work before starting up Virality, and I went to a gym there called Tiger Muay Thai.
Oh, that's the most famous one. In Phuket? Or?
Yeah, in Phuket. So I spent about cumulatively maybe 3-4 weeks there in a space of 6 months. Oh my God, I tried all possible martial arts, right? Muay Thai was great. For a boxer to use feet was great, and I played so much football that some of those movements seemed a little natural. I enjoyed it. I tried jiu-jitsu, and that was incredible because also I went into a class and just learned right from the moves.
You have to be humble.
So,
or you'll get humbled.
Right. And I luckily had a friend who was American back then, and still is American from America, but he was also a boxer, never did anything else. So we were both exploring this new form, very, sort of as beginners. It was a great experience. Then I made a mistake of going and trying wrestling. Okay.
Oh man.
With this trainer called George Hickman, and he's quite popular now in Thailand and so forth. And oh my God, what an experience. I still refer this and tell my friends that there was a guy who looked like Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, same height, 5'1", 5'2". And all I remember from that afternoon session is constantly being lifted up on single legs and being dropped on my back repeatedly. And it was such a tough, couple of sessions that I did, really tough. And now looking back, I know there's so many UFC athletes today, the base is wrestling, right? If it's a Khabib or a Islam or a Charles Oliveira, he's probably jiu-jitsu, but you look at Arman Sarukian who's coming from.
Even George St. Pierre.
Yeah, George St. Pierre, all the greats, right? John Jones.
John Jones, of course, big time wrestler.
Big time.
Yeah, wrestling is the biggest base for getting into mixed martial arts, of course.
The adversity in that, because you also are taught to cut weight from a very young age, right?
Yes.
It's incredible.
Your body gets used to it.
Yeah, body gets used to it. So these guys are crazy, and I could see
the
in
endurance.
them.
They can take punishment like nobody's business and just the amount of stamina. You have done this, right? A man of a similar weight pushing against you and you're pushing against him, the amount of energy that's expended in that process, it's immense. It's really intense, that sport, man, wrestling.
Absolutely.
I honestly have all the respect in the world for wrestlers, and I'm talking about the real wrestlers, not
Olympic wrestlers.
Olympic wrestlers. Of course, I have a lot of respect for pro wrestlers as well,
that's it's a
completely different field. But the Olympic wrestling, this is intense. And the one thing that saddens me a little bit is how little of it is done in India anymore.
Yeah.
All our wrestlers are primarily from Haryana. And Haryana is one place where, due to the efforts largely from a very small bunch of a handful of people, wrestling has thrived over the past 30-40 years. It's like people like Abdul Manaf Nurmagomedov, Khabib's father, he almost single-handedly promoted wrestling for a long time in Dagestan. And now Dagestan is this place like where you have like multiple Olympic champions in a place like Indira.
Yeah, like
right?
Dagestan is insane. I was looking up some stats, right? They have about 42 Olympic wrestlers. This is from
medalists,
from the last 2 Olympics or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? They have about, I think, 20 to 30 other mixed martial art wrestlers in different promotions across.
Yeah.
BWFL, UFC, ONE FC, etc.
Yes.
The culture is so strong. Right, and this actually does relate, and this is, I think, how sport generally thrives in most parts of the world. Where if you look at Brazil and football, it's similar. If you look at some pockets in India where cricketing talent, maybe like Mumbai, for example, it's a similar thing, right? Culture sometimes really grips into society, and then it starts producing because it just becomes a way of life, and standards starts getting set.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised that in India, Haryana is the hotspot.
Absolutely.
And I think there are similar things. If you look at football, there's this hotspot of Goa, Malabar, Northeast.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from.
Yes.
So,
but the exceptional thing about Haryana is that they're really producing world-class wrestlers. Like their wrestlers are literally getting medals in the Olympics. Like Vinesh got so close this time.
Yeah.
Would have won a gold, I'm sure, if not for the unfortunate, way it panned out. But there is just so much good stuff happening in Haryana, and it just saddens me that. So clearly we have the genetics for it. Like a lot of sports Indian people will say that, okay, we don't have the genetics for this sport. Like, let's say 100 meters, right? Like people are going to say, no, we cannot possibly compete with the fast twitch muscle fibers of people from, let's say, another race. But clearly we can do well in wrestling. That's a sport that we are doing good at. It's a sport that we as a civilization contributed heavily to the development of, right? Like if you even read the Mahabharata, you will find, when Shri Krishna has that whole battle with his uncle Kansa, and he actually goes and he has basically a wrestling match with him, in which he ends up, he ends up killing him. That was called Malla Yuddha. Okay, Malla Yuddha was MMA, literally MMA, yes, of the ancient India, and we had the sport, like we had a very wrestling-based fighting sport back in the day, and unfortunately, it's something like that doesn't exist anymore. What we do now is Greco-Roman wrestling, which is still an ancient form of wrestling, also very influenced by Indian style of wrestling, which is Kushti. And we have gyms that teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gyms than Indian Kushti gyms, which is just so sad. And if you're someone who's lived in Bangalore for a long time, if you ask people who've who are in their 70s or 80s right now, they'll tell you there were plenty of akhadas in Bangalore as well, like actual places you could go and wrestle. And now there's, I think the last I heard, there was only one left somewhere in Koramangala, and I'm not sure even if that's around anymore.
And it's also, I think the way the world's going, it's looking less sexy, right, in front of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is far more comfortable because you're in an indoor arena. You wear inners, your skin doesn't really touch anybody else's skin. It's comfortable, right, and it's considered a sort of more cool, more accepted form of martial arts. So I think that's the reason, and I think one of the reasons why I think Jiu-Jitsu is also growing is there's no blood in it. And one of the reasons I realized, when I was boxing, a lot of people didn't take up to it is because of the fear of blood, which I think is lesser in boxing than just basic MMA. So I think a lot of the factors play. And I also think culturally our understanding of sport is very, very bad. Like if you look at the incident at the Olympics, right, with what happened with Vinesh, for example, on the weight categories and inability to cut and make the weight. There's a technical side to it. Of course, there seems to be like the athlete and the board and the sports science are all not on the same page. It felt that way. But the instant reaction online was a political thing, right? That's the way we reacted because it's easy to sort of do that.
Yeah, that's really horrible. Like, it's a person representing the entire country. It doesn't matter what their political opinions are. On that stage, they are, representing the whole country. Like think of it, equate it with something like a soldier fighting for the country on the border, right? That soldier, it doesn't matter if that soldier votes for Congress or BJP or any other party. I mean, over there, he's a soldier with the entire country behind him. And, we all need to support that soldier. That's how it should be for any kind of representative of the country. If you have somebody, let's say a child who goes to deliver a speech at an international conference, he or she is going as as an Indian student, as an Indian person, representing the country on that platform. If they are sent in an official capacity, right? Same thing with sports persons. If they're being taken, if they're being presented there as the representative, as the best of the best from our country, then we need to obviously, back them up. So it was certainly very unfortunate. And I really want our country to move forward from these petty divisions, man, especially when it comes to people representing us. Because divide and rule is something that, we have unfortunately been some of the biggest victims of in the world. I mean, this is something that, our former masters have done all over the world, but I think they were the most successful here out of any other country. So unfortunately, that's how it's been, and it continues to happen in ways our people don't realize.
You think that divisions still exist today in society?
Absolutely. And a lot of the divisions, unfortunately, are created by us ourselves. So there's this thing. I'll fill you in on something that happened recently. So I was on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I saw this tweet by this person. He's a kid, basically, an influencer, but like a kid regardless. And I think this happened in the wake of the Atul Subhash case recently, when a person unfortunately committed suicide due to alleged harassment from his wife. That's what it was. And when he committed suicide, after that there was a huge outcry about the laws being in favor of women and all those things, which is a discussion on its own separately. But there was this person who tweeted that if you have money or if you have the resources to, then you should just leave India. Okay. And it got a lot of traction, like a lot of people.
I think I saw this tweet.
Yeah. So, a lot of people liked it, retweeted it. And if you look at who's liking and retweeting it, it's all Indian people. So what is this, amount of disillusionment with the country, right? So I quote tweeted that and responded, if you have courage, fix India. Okay. Like if you have the courage, if you have like at least some shred of, integrity or some kind of commitment towards your nation, then try to fix this country, and leave a better country for the next generation. And that's how a lot of our populace used to think earlier. But now, because there are options open, and somehow there's this air of disillusionment with the country, air of disappointment with the country. And I didn't think much of it when I tweeted it, but then that thing blew up a lot. It's my most liked tweet of all time. I mean, it didn't blow up more than him. Now we're still fighting that sentiment, but the point is that it really resonated with a lot of people. And that's when I decided to start something like I've started working on this thing called the Fix India movement. So on 9th August 1942, if I'm not wrong, Mahatma Gandhi started the Quit India movement. And then many years later, we are going to launch the Fix India movement, where we are going to educate citizens from all over the country about how they can use the existing government mechanisms to get most of their problems solved. And if they can't, and for whatever reason they're stuck somewhere, then we are going to come in and try to help them. So, that's the kind of thing like that, I am a proponent of fixing things in the country, of making things better. So when you talk about the divide that exists, we are divided on things like these, like whether, it's sad because we've had divisions based on caste, of course, in India, if you go back in history, right, there were class divisions, and then those class divisions were formalized as caste divisions. And then that sort of was used in a very predatory manner by a lot of people. And I don't really know what they intended to do when they started the caste system, but it was 100%, it became very predatory, and it became extremely exploitative, and it kept a lot of people at an extremely unfair and, like really horrible state of existence, okay, for a long time, centuries. And of course, there have been a lot of measures undertaken since then. thanks to, the founding fathers of our new nation now, which I call like the post-independence India. Mahatma Gandhi, of course, was somebody who did a lot of work about it. You can talk about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was a visionary, who he was a man of very strong views, but, he made things happen, and he uplifted a lot of people out of, a very horrible state of existence and helped them get self-respect. And there were many such leaders. Of course, a person who I look up to, one of my idols is George Fernandez. He was India's tallest socialist leader, in my opinion. And George Fernandez spent his entire life for workers' rights, the rights of disadvantaged people, underprivileged people who were, get left behind by the society in some way or the other. He was just such a fierce fighter for everybody who was facing a disadvantage or was put at some kind of a, lower position in the society. And he just fought his whole life, man. So the point is that these divisions are ingrained in our society, and now there are new divisions that are coming up. So I don't remember there ever being, for example, like in the history of India, right? We didn't have a group of people being like, okay, this kingdom sucks, wherever they lived, and I'm going to go and start living in a European kingdom instead. There was no such thing. We were the best. We were the best in the ancient eras, right? So people knew that this country is really great. And of course, back then, information wasn't traveling like this, but even the travelers who did come to India, like Huan Tsang from China, or, Suleiman from the Arabian, I think it was a Persian or Arabian traveler who came to India. These guys came to India, they were like, man, we've been everywhere else. This country is the best, This country has the best everything from back then. And so back then, people didn't have this kind of a complex. But, there are way more divisions than there ever have been in this country. Caste-based division is still a reality in many places. I mean, you just need to open the newspaper and go to the classified section, and you're going to see the caste-based division very clearly and evidently still being published, right? You go to a website that is a matrimonial website, and you're going to see all the caste system very much alive and kicking and thriving, And there's just so much. So there's caste. Yeah. Then there's, of course, the class divide. You've got that going on. Then you've got people who do not like India but are still in India. And then there are people who like India but they are getting disillusioned day by day. So,
I've always felt these divisions have always been there. I think one of the reasons that it's so prominent today is because, and I was talking about this to somebody just recently, which is back in the day, if you were a lazy idiot, for lack of a better term, you didn't have a podium to express your views.
Yeah.
Because you never reached that height where you would ever get an audience who would listen to you.
Absolutely.
But today, social media has changed that, right? Anyone and everybody can put something out and trigger somebody or sort of gather online hate or create divisions, etc. And that has become prominent, and as a result of which I think we see it more. If you are on social media all the time, we see and feel that all the time.
Absolutely.
But I can relate to it because running a media agency, I am one of those people who was obsessed with social media. So I would just spend time on every single platform trying to figure what people are doing.
With the territory.
Yeah, right. And now over the last year and a half, 2, I've just been like, okay, turning off all notifications, not opening the apps in the morning and evening. Just because I'm starting to realize that people are now having 2 forms of behavior. One that they do online and the other which is offline.
Yeah.
And most people offline are the most mellowed down, most sensible, will think twice, thrice before saying or speaking.
Yeah.
Whereas on X, the minute you see something, you're like, you're just
your unfiltered thoughts come out.
Yeah. So,
but you know what? I have a point to add to that. I think the fact that it's all out there on social media now, even if you look at the US now, the racism that's up, that's there against Indian people now, it's out in full force. It's things they never said anymore. They didn't say before, but now they're like, okay, we might as well. It's like a diagnosis of a medical problem, right? you do one test, you figure out some part of it. That's how it was when people didn't really have a place to speak. But now that they can really reveal their inner thoughts, you know the true rot that exists, you know. And at least you have a pretty decent, or at least a way better understanding of the rot that exists within the society or within the system. And, you know, you understand just the extent of how messed up things are with our society right now. And it's only when you know the problem that you can really start to fix it.
True.
So I think in that sense, it's good that there's social media. It's good that there are people putting it all out there on social media.
True.
So, you know, sociologists or people who are working on this, you know, and the government and just people like, you know, like people who work for the society, and just a common citizen, everyone can really truly understand what actually is out there. Because if someone is capable of expressing that opinion online, they clearly have that opinion. It's just that they choose not to express it offline, like in a real world setting. So I'm just glad it's out there, man.
You know, but I also feel they will never express it offline.
Yeah.
I think there's far too much to lose.
But they'll express it in private settings. They'll tell it to their children, you know. They'll raise their kids like that. And the deeply problematic things that they tell, that a lot of the children are raised with, the kinds of opinions, you know, the kinds of horrible thoughts and absolute like perverse levels of racism, casteism, you know. But I'm glad these guys come out there and express it online.
Yeah,
so
true.
You know.
And I also think the political landscape of our country somewhere encourages this, because that's the way for them to create vote banks and keep their, you know, loyalists to themselves. And then it's just too murky. I think in the lure for power, they just sort of drop all values.
Yes.
And I think that feeds to this too. So I think the only way out of this is just collective education, conversation. I think actually speaking about these things out in the forum, and I think more activities or activations, right?
Yes.
Like the things that you're doing for that matter.
Yes.
That's the only way to solve it. I think keeping it bottled will never sort of help anybody.
Yeah, absolutely not. And when I do my social work and all the people that are volunteering for, you know, the work that we do, I have made it a point to tell everybody that we will not do anything political, in the sense that we are not going to talk about politics. We are not going to discuss political things in our communities, in our groups, because I want it to be only about, you know, helping other people. I don't care if somebody comes to us who's a BJP follower, you know, follows BJP, loves Narendra Modi. Irrelevant to us, because this is a person who needs help right now, and we are going to do what we have to help this person. It doesn't matter to me if this person's a communist, you know, otherwise in their life. Like, it doesn't make a difference if they're Hindu, Muslim, Christian, anything. All that matters is that they're a human being. They're a fellow citizen of our country. And sometimes we've even gone way out of our way to help people who are not Indians also. You know, just as long as they're humans, we'll do whatever it takes to help them. And that's all that matters. And because I also used to be somebody who had my own like opinions, and I used to like base everything on those opinions when it comes to politics and stuff. But I realized that me having an opinion is like really just a, you know, drop in the ocean. It does not really make a difference. Even if I want certain political changes in the country. Like, for example, I would love it if we had less of a government, you know, in terms of the amount of people that are currently engaged in like a lot of useless work within the government system. But these are political opinions, you know. I would not, it does not make a difference what opinion I have. I think what I can make a difference in is the problems that people have right now. In fact, I really thought about it for a long time, you know. I was doing my social work, I was doing some volunteering on the side and things like that, but I realized that there are a lot of people with a lot of problems, and the best use of my time is to just help them and to just make sure that I can, you know, make some good use of my time to see them through their problems and issues. And I think that's more like, you think of it like that, right? Like ROI, return on investment, right? So in terms of ROI of my time, that's the best way to go about it, is what I thought. And that's how this came about.
This is, so, you know, talking about making a difference and the sort of the help and what we discussed yesterday briefly about the origin story of your foundation, right? Firstly, the name. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
If you want to tell everyone what is the story behind that?
Yes. So Saint Broseph, you know, is something that came from the internet culture, the subculture of internet, which is all about memes and, you know, like making words out of other words. Now it's gone on to another level. But in the late 2000s, there was this whole fad on the internet where people who were on online message boards back then, there wasn't much social media, but whatever message boards existed, a lot of people on those message boards used to address each other using variations of the word bro attached with other words. So, Obama used to be president, so he became Brobama, right? Poseidon is the lord of the ocean, so Brosidon, right? So anything that went with that, they would attach bro with it. Even bromance was a word, that got very popular around that time, like two bros just hang out. So bromance. So Broseph had been around, I think. People I think particularly in the US used to call each other Broseph from time to time, but it really picked up at that time. And Broseph, or Saint Broseph in particular, is that friend in your group who will always come through and will always help you out no matter what. He's the saint of the group. That bro is the saint of the group. So when I used to have more of an online presence, like in forums, and I used to play like some online games with my online friends.
I really found out last night how big you are on Reddit. I had no idea.
Yeah. So back then I wasn't like, this is just at that stage of me picking my username on Reddit. So I used to play games, like just one game in particular. It was called League of Legends. And so I had some friends and they used to call me Saint Broseph. They used to call me Broseph or Saint Broseph because I was very helpful. I would help them understand the game and things like that. So, I always had this kind of like a helpful sort of disposition. There's reasons for that, like how that came about. But so when I was choosing my username on Reddit, I actually wasn't on Reddit. I was under the impression that Reddit is not such a great place back in the day. But a friend convinced me. She said that this is really cool because you are really into history and politics and things like that. So you should join Reddit. And I didn't really know that about Reddit, that it actually has really great discussions about a lot of topics. So I joined Reddit in 2013-ish. Yeah, 2013. And when I joined Reddit, I was trying to pick a username. So I tried Bhaijan, which was my gaming tag. And this is pre-Bajrangi Bhaijan, pre-Salman Khan. So no influence there. So I couldn't find that. I think someone already took that. So then I tried Broseph. Broseph was not available. So then I tried Saint Broseph, and Saint Broseph was available. So I took it. And yeah, I just existed as an anonymous username on Reddit for some time. And then I started to realize that there was quite a bit of a local community in Ahmedabad. That's where I was at that time. And, just started to get more involved with the community. And eventually, many years later, when it blew up on Reddit and I started to really help people and dedicate most of my time to doing it, and then eventually all my time to helping people. So the name Saint Broseph really came up like that. I'm pretty sure it could have just as easily been like Mad Max 3000 or,
It's a very, very cool, catchy name.
Yeah. It's because it was so unique and I think it really fits what I'm doing. So
Absolutely.
I just retained it. I didn't really make an effort to change it. And it just caught on.
Do you get some, do people misidentify you to being religious in some ways or, because saint with anything just gives you that missionary sort of vibe, right?
Yeah. So there are times when I get calls from people and they're like, "Hey Joseph," and I never intended to call myself Joseph. So it was like it's Broseph, or you can call me Dushyant. So that happens, but. I'm sure some people think that. I've had volunteers tell me that their parents told them like, "Hey man, is this like a Christian thing you're going for?" I'm like, "No man." So basically, some people do think that, but it's fine. I don't care. Like it's just once they get to know, they're like, "Oh, okay, fine."
Right.
But it's nice because it's such a neutral name. It's Saint Broseph. So it's clearly not like a serious thing. It's not like some actual Christian saint's canonical name. Like it's just something, something interesting. And if someone puts 2 seconds into thinking about it, I think they're going to let go of whatever preconceived notions they have about it. And I don't really mind it anyway. Like if someone thinks of me as Joseph or Saint, or they think this is inspired by Saint Joseph was a pretty cool guy as well. So I don't really mind.
So I'm assuming social media has played a big role in your life because of obviously the background influence you've had, and then to starting up doing what you're doing too. So and that story you told me yesterday, incredible. I think if you could share that for everybody and just I think that'll build the context for everyone as to why
absolutely.
your background played such a big role.
Absolutely. So yeah, as I mentioned, like I've been on the internet since a pretty young age. I've been on the internet since about 1998, which sounds ancient now. That's
Dial-up
2025.
internet, right?
Yeah.
That's dial-up.
Yeah. Dial-up internet, yes. And I remember when a download speed of 15 kbps was incredible.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is quick, man. This is fast. And, I remember we had BSNL, like a landline, and then we would dial up to Satyam back then.
Yeah.
Sifi it was called.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm from that era. Of course, like very privileged to be able to have access to the internet at that time when most of India did not. So I remember. So I've been on the internet since then. Back then, there was absolutely no social media. There was something called Usenet. So you could go on these, they were like online groups basically, and you could post stuff on there and someone would reply to you like whenever, they got around to seeing it. Then came the era of message boards. So this programming language called PHP, people would code these PHP and SQL based message boards, and they would post their messages, and they could make threads, and people would reply to the threads. So they end up being called bulletin boards. So bulletin board systems, BBSs, forum softwares, and I found myself on quite a few of those. I made accounts on quite a few of those. Initially, I remember I got into like the first forum that I joined was something about like Bollywood because I wanted to download songs. So I joined that place, and it was nice to, be able to interact with people from all over the world. But I saw social media grow from a very young age. I saw Friendster. I saw MySpace, which was a huge phenomenon in the US. It defined a whole generation in the US.
Right.
Then of course, like Orkut was there in India, and then Facebook, Instagram, these things came later. But I remember being on like many message boards, but the one that I will talk about today was bodybuilding.com. So bodybuilding.com was this place. Of course, like true to the name, it had a lot of information about bodybuilding and working out, which is why I joined it in the first place. I wanted to learn more about diet, nutrition, because the advice that I was getting at the gym was real bro science. Like it was not exactly like solid information. It was just random stuff that they heard from somebody else, and there was no real evidence of it working. I could just take a look at them and figure out it doesn't work. What they're suggesting, if it really worked, it would have worked on them, right? So there was quite a bit of crap going around the gym in terms of the knowledge of exercise and nutrition. And now things are better, of course, but back then you had to refer to, more online sources like this. So I joined bodybuilding.com. I was quite active. And this is when I was about 17 years old. I joined it when I was 16 and I was 17 at the time of this incident. So the rest of the website was dedicated to bodybuilding, but there was one section which was about general discussions. So it was called the MISC, or the miscellaneous section of the forum. And people would post just random things there, something about sports or something, just random jokes, memes, things like that. And one day, I was already working. As I mentioned, I dropped out and I was working. So I came back from work. I went to work out. I came back from working out, and then I opened the forum. That was my routine, to just check what's going on and like see if the questions I posted got any replies, So I did that. And when I got on the forum that evening, what I saw was that there was a post made at the time of when I saw it. It had already been a few hours, but it was made by a person named Abraham Biggs. His username on the forum was Candy Junkie. And, he was this 19-year-old kid from Miami, Florida, which was not immediately apparent to people. They didn't know he was from Miami. But he had made a post saying that it was like, ask a guy who is going to overdose on drugs tonight anything. Okay. And the whole post was literally a suicide note. It was him talking about how he just didn't want to continue anymore. And that's why he was going to commit suicide by overdosing on prescription medication. So he was diagnosed with a couple of mental illnesses because of which he had, prescription medication, and he was going to overdose on it, and that's how he was going to end his life. So this was a post that he made. And what he also added to it was that not only was he going to do this, but he was going to stream this. He was actually going to stream it live.
And we have a very popular streaming website today. It's called twitch.tv, where all the gamers, it's the number one streaming platform in the world. But back then, that website was called justin.tv. So it was started by a man named Justin who just wanted to live stream his life. So he made that website and then he opened it up for other people to stream their lives too. So this guy said that he was going to stream it on justin.tv. So he left the link to his channel on that post. I mean, on to his stream basically. And when people opened it, they saw that he was like facing the webcam. He was I don't know if he spoke anything, but he just like ingested the drugs and he went to sleep on the bed that was right behind. That was his room. And he was sleeping with his back turned towards the camera. And people were just horrible, man. Like, if I have one word to describe it, it's horrible, pathetic. People were not only not at all supporting, like not at all trying to like make him feel better or try to talk him out of it. They were not doing any of that, but they were on the contrary egging him on, insulting him, berating him, calling him racist terms, homophobic terms, like all kinds of shit. And I can imagine like he would have read all that, and obviously it wouldn't have helped the situation or the state of mind he was in. And there were many, many mean, horrible comments on that thread. And I'm assuming, I remember hearing it from certain people back then that there were quite a few of these comments on his stream as well. So if he was checking the comments on the stream, there were very, very horrible comments there. And it was also posted on other places like 4chan and stuff. There's quite a few of those websites which were not connected to bodybuilding.com. So he got a lot of hate because that post was a cry for help. When somebody posts something about this, like they are being that vulnerable in public, they are literally asking for, if they're reaching out for somebody to look at that and be like, hey man, it's going to get better, don't think this way. If you need any help, we're here for you. None of that, nothing even close. It was horrible all through and through. It's like that conversation we had about Twitter, these guys would probably never say anything like that in real life, but that's who they are on the inside. And primarily Americans and Europeans. There were no Indians on that forum back then. So I saw that post. I came home and I opened my computer and saw that post. And that reminded me very quickly of an incident that had happened on another place. It was an IRC, Internet Relay Chat server. These were chat rooms back then, like very only text, like no emojis, just text. It was like multiplayer notepad, basically. So on one of those servers, another person had done this the previous year in, I think, 2006 or 2005. And immediately when my mind went back to that. I hadn't seen it myself, but I had read about it. So I told those people on that forum that, guys, this is something that happened last time. Someone tried to do this, so please don't allow this to happen. And I also went and I did research on his posts and I found out his name, his actual name, his like approximate location, which was Miami, Florida. I got his phone number because he had posted his phone number as a response to somebody who was asking if anyone wanted to go on a trek or something like that. So I got his phone number from there. And then I posted all that information. I said, guys, I am in India. You're in the US. He's in the US. Please call the police and inform them about this so that they can help him. People were saying it's a loop. The video is not exactly like real time. And I said, no, it's not a loop. I analyzed 4 frames and things were changing like very rapidly. Like the lighting in the room, everything was changing. I said, it's not a loop. Guys, it's serious. Like this is a very serious situation and all of you need to really take notice of it. And I was just a 17-year-old man, just like trying to get these grown-ups to act their age, and they weren't. And I remember I was getting they were discouraging me from doing anything. Like, why do you care? It's fine. He's just an attention something, and he's just doing it for attention. And there were senior members, like people who had a lot of posts and a lot of reputation on the community. And they were coming in there and saying things like, oh, the amount of drugs he took is not going to do anything to him. So there was quite a bit of that as well. Now, finally, I got really, I would say, anxious about the whole situation, and I was like, this is not happening. And I went to the Miami Police's website, the Miami Police Department, and I tried to find some way to contact them. Now, this is before the era of social media. So obviously you didn't have like a Twitter account that you could just DM or tag. This is an era where it was very difficult to communicate with people, even through the technology that existed. So we're talking 2007 at this point, right? So, it's 2007, 2009, 2008, yeah, specifically 2008, yeah. Sorry about that. So 2008 was pre-social media, I would say, adoption of social media.
Pre-mainstream social media.
Yeah, mainstream social media didn't exist. So I sent an email to the Miami Police Department about the incident, and I sent them the link and everything. Like, hey man, this is the link to the post. This is the link to the stream. This is a dude. These are his details, and he's in the process of committing suicide. He's overdosing. So can you please do something about this? And, I was like, okay, my work here is done. And, very unsurprisingly, the email bounced. It did not go through. Because back then, of course, like even the police departments or any government departments were not really up to date on technology. The fact that they had an email itself was like a big deal. So it didn't go through, unfortunately. I think I sent emails to their other emails, like 2-3 times I tried, and it all bounced. So then it was almost midnight in India. And I was in Ahmedabad at the time, and I remember thinking to myself, I have to do something. These guys are not going to do anything. And I was posting updates about everything I was doing on the forum, but the people were not reacting. Meanwhile, Abraham was just lying there. Okay. And I went to my parents' bedroom, and I got my dad's phone, because that was the era of prepaid mobile phones. And I didn't have like an international calling recharge. I had no need for it. But my father did, because we had some relatives that lived abroad. So I got my dad's phone, and he had some international calling credit left on his phone. So I called the Miami Police Department from Ahmedabad, and I spoke with them. And my voice was quivering. Even now, like whenever I retell the story, it's something emotional, because it was a very formative experience for me. It has always weighed down very heavily on me. So I remember calling that police helpline number, and I spoke with the police officer, and the officer, they also didn't quite understand what was going on, because this whole thing about somebody streaming the suicide online and overdosing on drugs, it is a very weird thing for them to hear in that time as well. So they kept transferring me. I think it was the third time that I got transferred basically to the fourth person. And that fourth person was from the emergency helpline, and it was a lady, and she asked me for the number that I had of Abraham, and I gave her the number, and she said, this is from Broward County. So it's like somebody calling Bangalore police and them analyzing the number as saying, this is Indiranagar's number, so you should call the Indiranagar police station. So she gave me the number of the sheriff of Broward County, and the sheriff is basically the inspector. So I said, fine. I mean, in that moment, I felt like, why are you telling me, a kid from India, to call the other police official when you yourself should be the one doing it? But, that's what it was. And then I posted that on the group, on the forum as well, on that post, that guys, I called the Miami police, and this is what they said. And can you guys please, do something? Can you call it? Because that phone was out of calling credit. In fact, it had negative balance. So back then, if you went on too long with a call, I don't know what made it happen, but sometimes it would go into negative balance. So there was no way for me to make another call again. So I requested people to call. Again, nobody was taking it seriously even then. So I went back into my parents' bedroom, and I remember the dog barking a little bit, like what are you doing, dude? Like, why are you coming in here again and again? But I got my mom's phone, and then I called that Broward County sheriff, and the sheriff told me that just now I got off a call about this, and we've already dispatched the deputies. They're on their way. And
so someone must have seen your message.
Yeah. So there was this dude, his username was JJLee138. I still remember it. He was the one who saw it and who called the Broward County sheriff before I did. And I'm thankful to him for that. So, it happened. And then there was nothing else to do. I just turned on the stream and watched it. And there were all these horrible comments. There were roughly 2,000 people watching, which is still a huge number for a stream today. right? So imagine in 2008, 2000 people watching, and every single person was just saying pathetic, horrible, mean, evil things. And finally, the door was broken open and the officers came in, guns drawn. That's their protocol. And they checked his pulse and covered the camera. So, a few hours later, Abraham's sister posted on the forum the unfortunate news that he had passed away. And I was really sad that we couldn't save him. So I went to sleep, okay, because it had been a long night for me. So I went to sleep and I woke up, I think somewhere in the afternoon the next day or somewhere close to late afternoon, evening. And I opened the forum to see what's going on, and my inbox was full, which is weird because that forum had a limit of 1,000 messages in your inbox. And I maybe had 50 because I'm messaging somebody asking for exercise advice or whatever. But it's full. So 950 messages from somewhere. And I opened those messages and they were all messages from people from all over the world just thanking me or saying good things about me, or they were just praising me for the actions that I took that night. Because I think everybody went through the thread and saw what happened, and they had a whole picture of what happened, which person was actually trying to help, and everybody else was just laughing at the situation. So there were so many people praising what I did, and I couldn't for the life of me understand what was it that was so special about what I did. This is just something that anyone else should have done, so I still maintain that belief. I didn't do anything special. But the thing is, that incident, basically that incident became international news at that time. This whole phenomenon was extremely new and unheard of. So it was picked up by international press. It even was telecasted in India. There were news channels covering it in India, which was surreal for me because I'm watching the evening news with my dad the same day and I see it on TV and I'm like, I can't believe this is on TV, over here. And it was covered by a lot of publications. There were research papers written about this thing in very prominent universities of the world. Books are written about this subject where this is one of the things they cover. And my actions have been analyzed by people I don't even know, in research papers and stuff. So it's quite surreal. But the impact it had on me, okay, so I already grew up, like I said, with, seeing my father doing all kinds of charitable and great work for others. But this incident made me understand how much initiative is required. I think I, on a subconscious level, was very deeply affected by what happened here. And before this incident, I was very keen on entrepreneurship. I was very keen on, doing things to make money online. It's one of the reasons why I dropped out. The major reason why I dropped out is because I had a career. I was doing things to make money and I had websites and they were doing well. I was extremely committed. Every day I would wake up, okay, I'm going to add this page to my website. I'm going to, introduce this feature for my community members and things like that. And it all just went away. It all went away because I realized, or somewhere within me, I think something happened where it was it was during the formative years of my life, and this was an incident that had a great impact on it because it just changed me fundamentally as a person. It turned me into somebody who felt like I had to be the one to do what was required in any given situation to help somebody. I had to be that person. If nobody else is doing anything or someone else is doing anything, it doesn't matter. I have to also be in there, or I have to be the person to go in there and do something about it. And this just changed. And many years after this one, I really struggled with it. Because I'm trying to do the same stuff I was doing before. I'm trying to build another website. I'm trying to, get another business going or something. And later on when I, left, I finally decided to also go elsewhere and get a job or something. I'm working, but I'm not ambitious about, going up in the corporate ladder and things like that. And I just could not understand why I didn't have it in me anymore. And thanks to some therapy in the later years, I was able to finally figure it out that this is what happened. And this incident had a way more profound effect on me than I initially thought it did. And, after that, I think I embraced it fully.
No.
Yeah. So pretty significant incident at a very, very crucial stage in my life. And, rest in peace, Abraham. That's all I can say. I mean, I still, there's a memorial page for Abraham on Facebook, and like if you go there, you'll see that I've posted there like almost every year. Like I go in there and I post. I mean, this is even before Broseph and stuff, man. Like, because I always felt some kind of a connection with his memory, with the fact that we tried and it didn't work, and so somehow I felt like, I mean, I would go in there and just like write a message that, hey, Abraham, hope you're doing good, man. I wrote a message to him during COVID that, I hope, I'm sure it's better up there than it's here. So, it's, so his auntie generally is the one who reacts to that. I mean, a couple of us still keep his memory alive, I guess.
This is a stranger, right?
Yeah, I never knew him. But he was 19, man. I was 17. Like, both of us were on the same forum trying to pursue the same kinds of fitness goals. So I could relate to him in a lot of ways. And, I mean, him posting it there was basically expecting one of us to react and try to talk him out of it. And, it didn't happen, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I mean, I try to use that. I try to use the fact that this happened to help others as much as I can, and that's why mental health is one of the biggest things that is a part of the work I do now. And our mental health initiatives, the things we do at Broseph Foundation, we help people get therapy. I mean, of course, we can't account for the performance of every therapist, how helpful they'll be, but at least we make sure that nobody is deprived of therapy. Anyone who needs therapy gets it. If they can't afford it, we help them. I've been paying for many people's therapy myself since the past 2-3 years. And we have like a lot of kind people who are also kind therapists who are also giving pro bono sessions now through us. So we help people get, the right kind of mental health support that they need. And, apart from that, like we really want to get started on our support groups. So we also want people to have these communities that they can come to and share their problems with. And most of all, and the core driving force behind everything that I do is it doesn't matter what the problem is, okay? Whether it's related to mental health or a legal issue or something else. Nobody should feel helpless or hopeless. So I think at that time when Abraham felt the need to write this post, I mean, of course, it was his mental health, but I think he also felt helpless and hopeless. And of course, his mental health struggles, I cannot speak to them. Like I cannot really like imagine what he was going through. But from our side, like what we try to do with Broseph Foundation and the work that I do is to make sure that nobody ever feels that low. There should always be that hope that, okay, I can go to Broseph and he's probably going to sort it out. I can go to Broseph Foundation, they'll figure something out for me. They'll take care of me. And I'm building the organization to get to that point where people really believe that no matter what happens, this organization is going to take care of it. So, it was one very, very major incident in my life and changed the whole course of my life. So that's what it is.
Anyway, one incident that happened, I just learned about this yesterday, which is our videographer, he lost his laptop a few months ago. It was stolen from his PG. And I think there's a full CCTV footage of how it happened, how the guy walked in, took it. He even knew where the cameras were. So when he was leaving, he just did a peace out sign, very overconfident thief.
Brazen, yeah.
And I remember him, our editor, spending the next 3 days running back and forth to the police station, unable to register an FIR, right, in Ranagar. Eventually, I had to call up our legal team and ask them, listen, what's the way around? And then then they said, listen, just go public with it on Twitter and X, and then something will kick in from there, and then it will tag the rest, authorities. So I made him do that. I spoke to all the people I knew who were big on X. I said, retweet it. It became big. And eventually the case was taken, FIR was registered, but nothing came out of it as expected. It was a little late by then, I guess.
Yeah.
And so Rafael, our editor, told me yesterday that you reached out to him, right? And asked and offered help in that scenario. But by then FIR was done, so he said is sorted and whatever. And I'm assuming this is not one case, there are plenty like this.
Yeah, thousands.
Right? So what's the most common need for which a civilian comes to you where the system fails?
Yeah.
And is this common where the case, for example, is not taken?
Yeah. So these are startling statistics that I'm about to tell you. An average police station in Bangalore, okay, is supposed to register anywhere between, with the number of crimes that happen in the city, anywhere between, let's say, 500 to 1500 FIRs a year. These are the statistics from police stations in general. Now, I can tell you that the actual number of crimes that are happening for which FIRs should be done are probably 5x or 10x that amount, right? That's the number of crimes that are happening in each police station. And there are hundreds of police stations in Bangalore. So imagine the amount of crime. And then there are certain police stations, I don't want to name them. We did an RTI about this, and we figured out that there are police stations in Bangalore that have only registered 200 FIRs or 150 FIRs in the entire year. That means that place where the police station is must be a paradise, right? It's really just dereliction of duty at that point. Like a lot of police stations do not take FIRs because they want to avoid, having to work. Yes. So I would say that to answer your question directly, the people come to me for all kinds of problems. There are civic issues that they come for, like a road has potholes and the corporation has done nothing about it, or the MLA has done nothing about it. Currently, we don't have corporators, councillors, of course. So the MLAs have done nothing about it. And, maybe streetlights are not working, footpaths are broken. Some place has become a black spot due to garbage dumping. Encroachment has taken place on a footpath. A place has become extremely dirty due to, garbage accumulating there. A certain street is not swept regularly. Garbage is not being collected. Water supply is not regular. Electrical, power cuts are happening, or power is just gone since 2 days and there's no, resolution to it from Bescom side. So all kinds of issues people come to us for. But issues with the police department, issues with getting the crimes registered with the police system, those are obviously, things that are very serious, and we unfortunately see a lot of them. There are so many lies that are told to the people. I want to be very, very, clear about this. The police officers tell so many misleading, things to people, and they tell, I'm very angry about this, honestly speaking. The amount of lies that are told to people in the police stations. Things like, oh, this is too low of an amount that you've lost in the scam. So for this, only an online complaint is necessary. An FIR is not supposed to be done. And with that, they turn them away. Okay. So let's say we had a lady now who lost about 18,000 rupees in a scam. And she was told, we won't do an FIR because this is too low of an amount. And I'm like, are you serious, man? What are you talking about? There was a person who used to volunteer at our office, and right in front of our office, some random boys came and stole petrol from his bike. That petrol was worth about 200 rupees. We got an FIR done for that at one of these low performing police stations, right? So even for the loss of petrol of 200 rupees or even 50 rupees, you can do an FIR, okay? Because a crime has happened. Somebody has stolen something. There's no threshold defined in our Indian laws that, okay, you cannot register an FIR if the loss that you've had is under this amount of money. No, of course not. It's still a crime. Theft has still happened, So they just make up all these excuses, and there's even worse. They actively manipulate people into not filing their FIRs by straight up lying. They say things like, oh, sir, madam, you're going to, you have a life, you have a good life, you have a career, you're going to go abroad. Now you'll have to come to court if you do an FIR, then what will happen to your, dreams and ambitions and your career and all these things. And they scare people, they spook people from if I'm the victim of a crime, then why will I have any inconvenience? The lawmakers of this country are not stupid. They have not created laws in such a way that victims are hassled or inconvenienced, okay? So, but these people exploit the fear that people have of the legal system to convince them to not file FIRs. And there's just an endless amount of lies that are told by the police department. But there's another aspect to it as well. when they don't do an FIR, they do something called an acknowledgement or an NCR, which is just the fact that, okay, this person came to the police station, told us this stuff. This stuff is not enough for. It's not so there are two types of offenses: cognizable offense and non-cognizable offense. Cognizable offense is the offense that police can take cognizance of and register a first information report, an FIR. And non-cognizable offenses are those which the police cannot register an FIR for directly and start an investigation right away. So for non-cognizable offenses, you're supposed to then go to court and obtain permission from the magistrate, district magistrate, the judge essentially, to then take that, you're supposed to take that order and then go to the police that, okay, the judge has said that, file this FIR, right? So certain offenses like a regular assault, like two people fight, slapping happens, no injuries happen. So stuff like that is just regular assault. It's a non-cognizable offense. So you'll have to go to court if you really want to press this case forward. Then a cognizable offense, for example, would be if somebody gets into a fight and uses a weapon. Or uses something like a weapon. So that would be considered a cognizable offense. So what happens is that they give these types of acknowledgements and let people go, and then they have nothing to do after that. Their whole responsibility ends there as police officers. But if they actually register the FIR, then, the amount of work that they have to do is like a lot. They have to, if I start counting it, it's a lot of stuff. They have to go to the spot to check that spot. It's called spot verification. On Mazar, it is called in Bangalore, or Panchnama in the northern or other places. So they have to do that formality. Then they have to collect the witness statements, like whoever witnessed it, they have to collect statements from those people and have them sign them officially. They have to, obviously, initially they have to file the FIR in the system. They have to collect all kinds of forensic evidence, send it to the forensic science laboratory, make sure the chain of custody of the evidence is properly documented, the evidence is transported properly. If the victim has any kind of injury, then there has to be a medical legal case done. So they have to be examined by by an accredited, like a proper hospital somewhere, and the medical report has to be entered into the case. They have to go to the spot and try to question other people there and see what they saw, what someone else saw, who can be produced in court to testify that this incident indeed happened. They have to collect all kinds of forensic evidence. They have to collect CCTV footage. They have to collect, if any mobile camera footage is there. Sometimes they have to take the device as well to make a stronger case that this footage is not manipulated. It really came from this phone, like that. So there's a lot of formalities there. Then they build a case over a period of time. They prepare something called a charge sheet. So they have to frame the charges against that criminal. And they have to take that person's statement as well. The person who's who's the alleged criminal in this case, they have to arrest that person. That's a huge task sometimes because the people go absconding. So they have to literally dedicate time, resources, manpower to finding that person. They have to trace that person, obtain the tracking data and things like that, the CDR data, the phone usage basically is CDR, and then internet usage and stuff like that. Track that person down, arrest that person, bring that person over, produce that person in court, obtain custody, and then cross-question that person, cross-examine that person, figure out if that person can confess or what is their side of the story. And then finally, with everything, they file a charge sheet in court. By the way, when you file an FIR, it's not your case, it's the police's case. So the police has to put in all the effort to prove it. As opposed to when you do a civil case. Let's say you have a property dispute with me and you file a case against me in court. So then it's between you and me. So you have to prove that I did something wrong. Okay. And then you're going to have to do all the investigation, come up with a bunch of facts to establish in court that I was in the wrong. Here, the police is the one that has to do that, right? A lot of people are under the misconception that they have to hire a lawyer to represent themselves in police cases. It's not the truth unless you're the one being accused of the crime. So all this stuff happens. Then they file it in court. And then the police has to really work with the public prosecutor, the government lawyer, to prove this case in court and to hopefully over a period of time get the other person, convicted of the crime that they're being accused of. That's the police's role to play in this whole thing. So imagine all that versus just not doing anything. Okay. So clearly it's really ridiculously imbalanced in this way. And the problem is that the police force in our country, and I can speak to how it is in Bangalore for sure, is very understaffed, very underpaid, and very underappreciated. Okay. So police, I have to say this. I cannot give an unbalanced opinion, right? I have to be objective about this. our police officers just simply do not get paid enough. Like a person like you and me, a person not exactly like us, like somebody coming from our type of background. Why would a person like this opt to go to the police force? The job simply does not pay enough to even sustain a family in a middle class environment. Okay, even if you're at like a head constable level or sub inspector level, you simply don't get paid enough. In terms of your salary to be able to live a decent, comfortable life, especially considering the kind of job you do, where there's so much risk and so much, danger from all kinds of antisocial and criminal elements that you deal with. So first thing is that. So like more qualified people or people who would, otherwise go to a different kind of job do not end up in the police force. There are some really good people in the police as well who have ended up there, and I have nothing but appreciation for those people, but we could have a better talent pool coming into the police force if the salaries were higher. So the government simply doesn't pay these guys
How much
enough.
do they get paid now? What's the starting salary?
I can get you the figures, but like it's not great, man. Like constables, I don't think it's more than 20-25K or something like that.
It's tough for a family to survive.
Oh yeah, like how are you going to get a family? And most of these guys are from villages and small towns. They have to send money back home. They have to maintain a lot of people, in their extended families as well. One person becomes a police officer. It's like, okay, now, we can expect our whole family to, get uplifted. So where do you think corruption comes from, right? People don't get paid enough, then they resort to these practices in order to make do for themselves. Now, not all corruption is like benevolent like this, like for benevolent reasons, but it has its roots in these kinds of things. So they don't get paid enough. And there's not enough of them. Okay, so there's a very limited number of people.
And I'm assuming many people don't want to be cops because you're not getting paid enough in the first place.
Absolutely, that's the whole point. Like most of our talented people prefer to do, or talented or dedicated or committed or very sorted out people. A lot of them don't want to do police jobs. Like some people are passionate about it, or some people think of it as a prestigious thing or whatever. Like for whatever reason, they go and join the police force anyway. But most people don't. Most people don't even consider it as a career option, unless you're an IPS or something, right? At that level, of course, the perks, the salary, all that stuff is pretty good. So understaffed, underpaid, definitely underappreciated. So the police is not allowed to have a union, for example. Police cannot go on strike, of course. So the government has made it illegal for the police to have unions. Police, army, these people can't have unions. So they don't have organizations advocating for benefits for them. Okay, so it's quite a wild situation. These guys overwork so much. Like overworking for a police officer is just a regular thing. They're Narayan Murthy's dream people, because they literally work 12-14 hours every day, or at least they're on duty 12-14 hours every day. So, under those circumstances, if you think from their perspective, even like how can you judge them for not wanting to do FIS, man? Like it's a systemic issue, and that's where it's all failing, because people's FIRs should be registered. I absolutely am completely a nonsense person about that. Any crime that happens, FIR has to be done. We push for it and we get it done. We've got thousands of FIRs done at this point in nearly every police station of Bangalore. But, I can see it from their perspective as well. And there has to be a lot of like a systemic overhaul, and things have to be made a lot better for these guys so that they can happily and willingly take up cases, unlike the state of things right now.
And I'm assuming the system isn't so motivated right now to fix this either. Because if, for example, if we don't have a mayor, and I was telling you yesterday about how I just learned it recently.
Yeah.
For 9 years, we haven't had a mayor.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't have enough corporators, right?
We have no corporators.
No corporators, which means the power then lies in MLAs, like you were explaining yesterday. And if the system itself is so inefficient top down, then of course you're going to face these problems at the grassroots.
Absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, like when we had a conversation off camera, imagine, and this is something for the viewers to ponder about. Imagine that the Prime Minister of this country was in a position where there are no chief ministers in the country. And the Prime Minister is the chief minister effectively of every state of India. Which Prime Minister would want to let go of that power, That you're not only the Prime Minister of the entire country, but you're also the Chief Minister of every state. So you not only control the entire country, but you also control each state specifically, right? That's the position of MLAs today. They have all the powers of the corporators, effectively speaking, right? That's why a lot of our MLAs are not exactly very keen on getting the corporation elections done, because it's going to dilute the power that they have. Now, if you have the mayor, right, like you mentioned, if you have a mayor of Bangalore, then that mayor of Bangalore is more powerful than the CM of Karnataka in Bangalore, like in a certain sense, because that person is the one that sort of is the head of the corporation.
Yeah.
That person is the one that has the authority to, take a lot of decisions about Bangalore. And Bangalore is the cash cow. So the chief minister, whoever it is, BJP, Congress, I don't care who it is, but they would like to have that control over Bangalore. Having a mayor, having corporators will dilute that. And generally, another thing is, I actually did this analysis and I really looked very deeply into it. When it comes to the Legislative Assembly MLA elections, right? The Vidhan Sabha elections, as we'll call them in Bangalore. These state elections, you will generally see candidates winning from one of the top political parties. Okay. So you'll have BJP candidates winning, or Congress candidates winning, or JDS candidates winning. But you will not see others pop up as much. But when it comes to corporation elections or village panchayat elections, there will be a lot of independent candidates.
Yeah.
Okay. They'll get pretty good votes as well, because ward is a very small area generally. But some wards in Bangalore need some work in that department, but generally they're pretty small areas. They are just like a bunch of neighborhoods, grouped together. And in that, they hold an election that, okay, we need a person to represent this area. And generally that's somebody supposedly from that area itself. And, a lot of times it's a local person who's been very committed to the area, like the president of an RWA, like a Residents Welfare Association of that area, who's been very active in uplifting the community. So that kind of a person is a very valid and reasonable candidate for representing that area as a councillor, as a corporator, right? And these people do win. So the ratio in which independent candidates win is much higher in corporation elections than it is in legislative assembly elections, and forget about MP elections altogether. Like that's too big of an election for an independent person to win in India. I was watching Mr. Narendra Modi's interview with with Mr. Nikhil Kamath yesterday, and he says that Nikhil brought up a pretty good point about how elections are so expensive to fight, and what our Prime Minister said was that why do people focus so much on elections? Like being in politics is not all about elections, which I agree with. But at the same time, it's unthinkable for a regular person to even consider, competing for the MLA position, like in an MLA election. But this level of election, corporation, right? This is very much obtainable for a regular person. Just as long as they've done honest work for the area, they are capable of getting those 10,000, 5,000 votes, whatever is needed to win. So this dilutes power. This gives power sort of, it gets people, like regular people, closer to a position of power. So that's why I think a lot of vested interests are against this happening. And it's deeply undemocratic, deeply unconstitutional for the fact that we haven't had elections in 5 years. We haven't had elections in 9 years literally, but the point is that at that time elections happened and the elected people, the elected corporators were there till 2020. And then these dudes, like they basically made up the excuse that, okay, it's COVID, so we can't do it. And now they're using it as an excuse to just delay things. Like COVID delayed things, then government changed, so that delayed things. And now they want to, they want to redistribute wards in a certain way. Yeah, it's all kinds of pathetic.
What can the citizen do about this?
We need to get together and demand for elections, and there has to be something. See, history is there for lessons to be learned from it. Okay, I sincerely feel like certain things that Mahatma Gandhi did, for example, non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, right? He's considered the father of our nation for a reason, because he's not like a biological father of the country of India, but father ideologically, right, of the idea of India that the current country that we have was born out of. So he's the ideological father of that. Civil disobedience, right, and non-cooperation. These things have then evolved in India in the form of strikes and bands and these kinds of things. Now, you don't see that happening in Bangalore at all. Like people don't generally get together en masse to protest something in that way. And in fact, it's reached to such a boiling point. I mean, it's gotten so bad that the previous government, the BJP government of this state, they literally banned protests in Bangalore. Cannot protest anywhere in Bangalore except for a place called Freedom Park, which is a nice place, but it's in a very convenient, like tucked away spot in the middle of Bangalore, where you will not normally go as well. Like unless you're specifically looking to go there, you're not going to find it. So it's not like that spot is MG Road, where thousands and millions of people are passing through anyway, right? So it can attract attention from the general masses. It's a very nice, convenient, tucked away corner. Okay, do your little protest there and go back home, right? That is an actual order that has been passed by the Commissioner of Bangalore during the time of BJP. And, for all the criticism of BJP, man, like that the opposition does, they came into power. And they could have repealed this very undemocratic, unconstitutional order, but they didn't do it. I mean, it still continues to be in force. Like they changed a lot of things that BJP did. I mean, a lot of orders that BJP gave or whatever. But this was one thing like, this is quite convenient.
Yeah.
If the people can't protest against us, it's quite convenient for us, isn't it? So then they just did not make any efforts to repeal that order. It's still in place very much, and it's something that I've taken up as a cause along with many other activists of Bangalore, and we've been actively appealing about it. So regardless of what's the state of protesting in Bangalore, I think people in Bangalore need to really wake up and smell the coffee, and they need to realize that a part of their voice as a democratic citizen of this country and as a citizen of Bangalore has been ripped away from them.
Yeah, but also most of the Bangaloreans don't care about it, right? Because half of them don't even come out and vote.
Yeah.
And the numbers in the city have been poor for the last 3-4 terms,
Absolutely.
right? Max we get to 56-58%. That's the turnout number. So they just don't care.
They don't care. And I don't think they know why they should care.
Yeah.
That's probably the more root cause.
Could something be done about that?
Absolutely. I think we can raise a lot of awareness about what's going wrong and what they're missing out on. People don't quite get the importance of having a corporator. And these are things that they should have been taught in school, or they should have been taught,
for all the civics they teach you.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. The civics we teach is so high level that
It's constitutional.
it's constitutional. It's like the duties of a member of parliament, what is a governor, what does the prime minister do. It's very elementary and high. It's elementary in the sense that it's very basic stuff, and high level in the sense that this is a level which you anyway will not reach.
Yeah.
Like you won't have much to do with this level in your life. So it makes, for example, in our civics curriculum, I don't think we were ever taught about the duties of a counselor.
No.
So, or what is, what happens in the corporation building, or what is, the corporation supposed to do, or what do its officers do, what is an engineer's job, what is an executive's job, what is a junior health inspector supposed to do. Like these things we were not taught. We have no clue about them. We don't even know these guys exist. For a lot of people, things just are happening. They have no clue how it happens. So unfortunately, because of a lack of awareness, we don't know what we're missing out on. So I used to have this opinion when I was more I didn't think much about it, but I had this opinion that revolution, I don't mean revolution in a communist sense. I mean revolution just as revolution, like something of an upheaval, right? Societal upheaval, systemic upheaval. I thought revolution can only happen when people's stomachs aren't full. So when they're hungry is the only time they will feel that it's now important for them to go out and participate in revolution. So I still hold that opinion, but now it's more nuanced. I feel like the hunger is not just physical, it's not just like a hunger for food, because that's the literal definition of it that I used to take up back then. That revolution will only happen once the masses become hungry. They will become hungry and they'll go and do something about it. Because I studied a lot of history, and a lot of revolutions came out of things like famine. A lot of revolutions came out of things like, people being deprived of their very, very basic rights, and they are literally starving to death. And then they're like, okay, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to go against the government now. So I feel like the hunger can also come from, just knowing that there's injustice, knowing that there's, things in the system that are not functioning as they should, knowing that your fundamental rights in the constitution are being denied to you, and having that kind of a reaction to it, getting angry about it, getting actually pissed off over it, that, because we should all be very angry with the way things are right now. We should all be actively pissed off about it. The fact that we haven't had a corporation election for 5 years in the Silicon Valley of India, in the city that is one of the most prosperous cities of the country, a city which is, which has put India on the map in more ways than one, right? This city does not have a democratically elected civic body. It should be pissing everybody off. And I think there's just not enough awareness about the fact that, first of all, this is a thing. And secondly, the deep lying implications of it, right? So I don't think, people know. I mean, most of the people, you're right, most people have no clue about this. And then even if they know it, they don't know how angry they should be about it, how absolutely upset they should be about it. I remember reading about the people's movements of the past in this country, the kinds of people's movements that happen. And in our HQ here in Indiranagar, in our organization's office, I have made a very strong effort to put together as many books about people's movements as possible.
Yeah, I saw some of it yesterday. Yeah, very fascinating.
Yeah, so I have made sure that these books, this repository of knowledge exists, so that people can, access this information and really understand how these things have happened. So, for example, there was this whole movement in Gujarat in 1970s, the early 1970s. It was called the Navnirman Andolan. Okay, Navnirman literally means redevelopment or recreation, like redeveloping the state or recreating the state. And there was such an incredible amount of corruption in Gujarat in the early 70s that the masses just got together and, they marched on the streets and they protested against the government that existed at the time. And they got quite a lot of reform done and, with their voices that they raised at the time. And that movement was the one that basically led to the students' movement of Jayaprakash Narayan, and which led to the emergency. And the emergency was the darkest period of this country's democracy. And after that, you had an opposition government for the first time. So it takes is a spark and, for enough people to be. And back then, internet didn't exist. The only mode of communication was newspaper. But the difference was that everyone read that newspaper, So I think it's also the responsibility of people who have a good social footprint. It's the responsibility of the people who have influence over others, your social media influencers, people who write for publications that are well read. I think it's the responsibility of people who are looked up to by the society in various fields to, raise their voices about the right topics without political bias, right? It should not be that you're raising your voice just because it's a Congress-run state and you support BJP. So you're going to go against Congress only because of that. That issue will remain an issue until it's resolved. It doesn't matter who's at the helm, right? So we need more unbiased politically, but very biased when it comes to citizens' rights, type of people. And unfortunately, we don't have enough of those. Everyone's very polarized, You can literally put all people in three buckets. It's either this party, it's either the Congress side of things or the BJP side of things or the I don't care side of things, And that's a very unfortunate state to be in. We need more neutrality. We need more people who will be politically neutral, but extremely in favor of citizen rights and constitutional rights and things like that. So there's a lot that needs to be done on that front. And I think we need to talk more about it and talk on more avenues and platforms about it and raise more awareness about this. That's the only way things can change in this city.
Right. And the meaning of all of this is that if top down, that accountability is not there for people in power, which means, and it brings back to the same problems or ground level problems of cops not being funded enough, not having enough incentive to solve cases, which then means crimes start going unnoticed, right?
Absolutely.
And rackets or organized crime starts to build up.
Absolutely.
Which I think is happening in some ways.
Oh yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
And you probably are at the forefront helping people, so you would know.
Yeah.
But a common man has no idea. I would not have an idea of what the actual problems on the ground are. So is there anything that sort of in terms of causes or requests or help that you've given and you've been sort of shocked yourself to know that there's something like this going on?
So of course, I can talk about the extent of cybercrime that's happening in this country right now. That's,
we're all victims. We're all targeted in that.
Yeah. Everyone's targeted, and unfortunately, way too many people have become victims to it. And it just speaks volumes to the just how vulnerable we are as a people that, we fall for scams like these. And, they exploit different vulnerabilities in different people. I just recently had somebody come into the office And she's a lady who's otherwise very well read, well educated. Like there's nothing, you wouldn't think of her as somebody who would fall for a scam. She was exploited for a different kind of vulnerability. Her vulnerability was lack of knowledge about the police, lack of knowledge about the legal system. And they used that to exploit her and extract a lot of money from her because they pretended to be the police department. And they said that she was accused in some kind of a drugs related case, and that's how they extracted money out of her. There was somebody else who's an auto driver, his wife basically, and she was exploited for her vulnerability, which was the fact that she did not have enough savings or enough money to take care of her family. So they lured her in and they extracted every penny out of her under the promise of doubling or tripling the money or something like that. And they basically gave her a job. That's how they roped her in, and they gave her some very small payments. And then once they built their trust in her, they exploited that trust to get a lot of money out of her. And she lost to the tune of 2 lakh rupees to that scam, which was all her life savings. And now she's in a really bad position, financially. So that's one thing. Most people are just not aware of the extent of these scams and how deep they go and what kind of psychological impact it ends up having on the people who get scammed. That feeling of being scammed, being robbed, being made a fool out of, it's just the amount of self-doubt and just the general sense of distrust that, gets into these people after they go through something like this. Man, I mean, if you know somebody who's been scammed, like an older person, that level of distrust that they then end up having against every other thing, it also adds to things like generational trauma. You'll find their kids also being like that, and it's just, these things are not good at all. The scams are in the tunes of thousands of crores, all over the country. It's really a pathetic state of affairs. So that's one.
It's crazy. And the fact that the government does not take a step forward so most of these come from telecallers, right?
Yes.
That's the common form. And we did some work around that from an advertising perspective. So some of bits of it, I know how it functions. And I think that's the most common format. And I think every 6 months or so, there's a new variation of a scam. There was some story of a influencer who I think got caught in something like this recently. He put the entire ordeal up on all social media to where he was stuck for almost a day indoors, etc.
It's like a self-arrest thing.
Self-arrest, right? It's crazy. So the government could very easily put a filter down to how telemarketing in itself is done. That's the step one to do, right? But I don't think there's enough incentive, because when you go on YouTube for the matter and search for these American hackers who expose these kind of scammers, and they will geo-target, tell you the location, where it's happening, how it's happening. They reverse hack them basically. And if you go deeper into that, you figure that there's no way that kind of an operation can work without support from some form of local authority.
Yeah.
Right. So which means that eventually you would suspect,
or at least ignorance. It's like 100%. A different type of cooperation.
Exactly.
Where you're not coming down heavily on those.
Correct.
Guys. Yeah.
So there could be a harsher, stricter form of sort of measures taken, but you don't hear anything about that.
Absolutely.
I think there was a recent video that went viral, right, where someone tried to call the Kerala Cyber Department, or called someone at the Cybercrime Department.
That was our video.
Right. It was yours. Oh,
yes.
Wonderful. Right. So
yeah. So I'll tell you the story of that video. So there's, this is the thing that is very unique about what we do. Like, we take individual people's problems and we do everything in our power to solve that issue as much as we can. So there was this little young girl, okay, and she came in and she had lost some money to a cyber scam, and we got the online complaint done, which is the cybercrime portal, cybercrime.gov.in, or if you're for whatever reason unable to do it through the portal, you can call 1930. These are the two ways to register it, and this has to be done immediately as soon as you lose the money, so that they can work to freeze the accounts where the money has gone into. Okay. Anyway, that happened, and then she came to the office to write the FIR, because she got an SMS from the cybercrime department telling her that now you can go to this particular police station to register your FIR about this case, so that further investigation can take place, and you can hopefully recover your money. So she came to the office, we wrote her entire complaint, and everything for the FIR, and I said, okay, fine. Now, before we go to and we also send our volunteers to accompany these people to the police station so that they can speak in Kannada, speak with the police officers, make sure the matter is communicated properly and the FIR is done. So I said, okay, show me the message. She showed me the message. There was a number, phone number given in that message, a mobile number. And the crux of the message was that, okay, call this officer and go for it, right? So I said, let's take an appointment from this officer because we don't want to go there and he's not there. And then, we have a further problem of waiting. So we called this person. She called this person. And the phone call was simply not going through. Okay. It was just not connecting. The phone was switched off, I think. So I was like, okay, don't worry about it. In our organization, we file a lot of RTIs. This year, our goal is to file 1,000 RTIs, about various things all over the country. Last year, it was 365, which we reached. And this year, it's 1,000. So we're going to try and hit that as well. So what happened was that we had an RTI already filed 2 months ago about all the contact numbers of every police station in Bangalore. In that particular police station's phone numbers were also there. So in total, we had 3 numbers in our sheet plus 1 number that she had got. 4 numbers, right? And we called those 4 numbers. I mean, the 3 numbers that we had also. 2 were mobile numbers. Both were switched off. Okay. And this is during working hours, 3-4 p.m. on a weekday. So there is literally no excuse for the numbers to be switched off. And then the 3rd number was a landline number, which was out of order. I mean, out of order meaning it was unregistered. That was what it said. This number is unregistered. Like they never literally registered the number or they got it unregistered. So that really infuriated me. And this is what I'm saying when I say that, we really go to the fullest extent to solve anyone's problem, is that we literally made a video of the phone and us dialing these numbers, okay? And we showed people that this is literally not working, okay? Each number is not working. And these numbers came from an RTI response from the Commissioner Office of Bangalore. So it's not like I made up these numbers or found them on some, outdated database of some online website, right? These numbers I got 2 months ago from the Police Commissioner's Office of Bangalore in response to my official RTI, okay? So you cannot dispute my data, okay? I did that and I put it up online on my Twitter account, on our organization's Twitter account. And sure enough, it caught fire. It went everywhere and quite a few journalists wanted to cover it. So they took more information from me. It was covered by the Press Trust of India. So it became national news effectively. Then it was covered, public TV locally did a extended investigation about it. They called all the cybercrime numbers of Bangalore, and most of them were not working. The same situation existed in all the other stations as well. Then Mirror Now, which is a national news channel, they did an investigative report on this as well. They also called most of them. By the point they got around to calling, 2 or 3 had started working out of like the dozen or so that exist. So, it was quite a eye-opening ordeal. Then they also spoke with the ADGP of Karnataka, one of the ADGPs, and he ended up assuring that he's going to look into it and hopefully something comes out of it, because we're not against the police, man. In fact, I love the police force. We do so much for the police as well, like as much as we can to show our gratitude towards the good work that they do.
Right.
So I'm not like somebody who's an anarchist and I hate the police or something. I really respect the police. I respect the police department and I respect police officers, at least the good ones, that are out there trying to make a difference in their own little way. There's so many kind people, so many lovely people in the police force as well. But when things like these happen, you have to raise your voice. So that report came from us. And of course, with the amount of cybercrimes that exist, for this kind of a systemic incompetence to, be there, it's ridiculous. Like, how can an officer just turn his phone off, when their number is actually publicly listed? It's not your, your own number. It's not your private number. It's the number given to you by the department to keep online at all times so that concerned citizens or people in trouble can reach out to you when they need help, right? Not everything can be done through the helpline. The helpline transfers you to the police station. So then it's the job of the police station to answer the people.
Yeah.
So,
so there's another video which is in Kerala where someone called the Thrissur Cybercrime Department, a scammer, and then the cop answered. First he engaged a little bit and then he unveiled saying, "Bhai, ye to cybercrime hai, this, that." The problem I had with that was the entire tonality and reception of that video was a very comedy, a comic content, right? Everyone was very happy or laughing and saying, "Oh, the reverse turntables and stuff of that nature." But I'm sure that there's a way to trace that call.
Oh, absolutely.
On the site, figure out where that is, inform the local authority or wherever that is, and immediately get action taken because you're actually on call and there's authority.
Yeah.
But it was more of the cop telling that guy, "Leave this, ye chhod do, ye mat karo." But could have been a stricter action then.
Absolutely.
That could have been the video, right? To set precedent that this is how we deal with it.
Yeah.
So there's a problem there too, which is that it's sort of taken as very silly. And I mean, I know a lot, like my mom once fell into one of these because out of ignorance, she went online and searched for some customer service number, and then that happened.
Yeah.
I've had employees here who got emails from fake IDs, which are mine, and with my name, with some other ID, obviously, and they don't see it in the rush, and especially that, so all the new employees who get targeted. And there's an instance where one of the guys actually wired 15,000 rupees
Wow.
to an unknown number, and he thought it was me. And this is a junior.
Basically got fished.
Yeah, and I'm in the office, by the way. And that day I was just a little late to come. And then that happened, and then he realized it could have been something. And then someone from the office called me saying, "Hey, did you ask for it?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." But then that keeps happening, and there's only so much you could do about it. So it is a big problem, at least on the cyber front.
Yeah.
And I think over time, and I don't know with AI now how much more it worse it could get, because they can mimic your likeness, they can mimic your voice.
Absolutely. They can probably figure out a way over the next few months or sooner to do an entire video call as you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to happen. It's going to get worse. And then the thing is that our people sometimes, like, or not sometimes, most of the times, make the mistake of underestimating our country and underestimating the talent and capabilities of our system or the people who work in the system. Okay, and I say this because we had a terrorist attack problem in this country in the 2000s and some part of the next decade as well. There were quite a few terrorist attacks happening all over the country, and people from those organizations had infiltrated many parts of the country, and they had extremely sophisticated operations running all over the country where they were actively planning terrorist attacks. And this same exact police force, these same exact home departments, home ministries of various states of the country, doesn't matter which political party, I'm talking about the actual people working there, right? And everyone sort of got together and they're like, okay, enough is enough. This problem is not something that we can, have happening in our country. And they pulled their sleeves up. Now you think about the gangster problem of Mumbai, for that matter, the Mumbai underworld issue. The amount of gangsters that existed, right? And now you see Mumbai is no longer that kind of a city. You don't have that kind of crime anymore, at least that level of organized crime anymore. You had this kind of a problem in Bangalore as well. There was a time where the city was all about a part of the society was so dominated by rowdies and ruffians. Now that's no longer the case in Bangalore as well. We've had chief ministers that took very decisive action against those elements, and we had some really great officers in the police department that took a lot of initiative to wipe out those kinds of elements from the society. So we have the competence to do these things. It just requires some will from the people who are at the top to actually be like, okay, this is a problem, we need to do something about it. Okay, so I don't know what, I can't really attest to what exact reasons are there for them not taking this as seriously as they should be. Maybe it's the fact that they don't understand this is a problem. Most of them are extremely old and not like they don't really understand technology the way we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so a lot of our political representatives are very old people. They don't see it the way we do. They don't understand it to the depth that we do. So they don't seem to have the understanding, to do something about it. And then I think the other thing is just a lack of will, man, not wanting to do anything about something. The thing is, this cybercrime has been such a silent killer. Like, it's silently taking so much away from so many people. The amount of people getting defrauded on a daily basis is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the victims are on both sides. So there are victims who lose money like this. Okay. And there are victims whose accounts the money goes through. Okay. Because they are called there's this term called money mules. Okay. I'll explain it for your viewers as well, for the viewers here. Money mule is somebody who is hired by a cyber criminal under the pretext of offering them like a legitimate job. And the job is literally to transfer money that comes in their accounts. Okay. So they think they're doing some sort of a legitimate work from home job, and they actually get paid like 1,000 rupees a day or something to do it. And these are people from like smaller towns or villages, and all they have to do is take the money that comes in and send it to another account. That's it. Like, this is easy money, right? Every day, 1,000 rupees. And when the cybercrime department takes action to freeze accounts, it's these people's accounts that get frozen, and sometimes the victim is lucky enough that those guys haven't had the opportunity to transfer the money yet. But other times the money is already gone by the time the cybercrime department gets there, or though that person's own money gets frozen, right? So there are victims all over the spectrum here, and it's really unfortunate, like you said, that there's not enough political will, or from the top down there's not enough action. If they wanted to, okay, you think a random YouTuber from the UK like Jim Browning, or a YouTuber from the US like Scammer Payback or Kid Boga, these kinds of guys, if they can like track down scammers and like expose their identities, then like Jim Browning, one person by himself can't possibly have more resources, talent, skills and time than the entirety of the Indian cybercrime department, right? If they really wanted to, they could be doing 1,000,000 times the amount of work that Jim Browning does. I'm not even exaggerating. And they could be exposing so many call centers, so many such elements all over the country. And
True.
All you have to do is, even at a very basic elementary level, they put out a reward of 10 lakh rupees for every single tip that leads them to uncover a scandal like this. That's more than enough. You're going to get, your line is going to be flooded with tips, because these dudes have people very willing and ready to snitch on them, provided enough money is paid.
For sure. But they're not, I don't think the system is motivated enough to do any of that.
Why isn't the NIA on this? Let's start there, right? Like the National Investigation Agency. Why isn't that on it? Why isn't the Central Bureau of Investigation on it? Why aren't they trying to do these things? Why are these things left to the home departments? Now, there's another thing in Kerala. I got a DM from somebody a couple of days ago. And that person is a crypto vendor, basically, somebody who, sells crypto to people. And his accounts have been frozen because apparently some of the money he gave to somebody was used for a scam purpose or something like that, or it was scam money was received in that account or whatever. So his whole operation has been seized. And the thing is, these guys themselves made some efforts to figure out like who did it. And apparently those same criminals were apprehended in Gujarat for another cybercrime that they did. And the police in Kerala has no clue that, this happened in Gujarat, and those criminals are already under custody of the Gujarat police. So there's no, cohesion or like cooperation between different police departments as well. So it's in a very, very alarmingly sorry state right now, the state of cybercrime in this country. And something needs to change very quickly, man. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse.
Right. Interesting. Are there any other causes that you as an organization focus on?
Yeah. So, as I previously mentioned, mental health is a big part of what we do. Basically, any kind of legal support that anybody needs, as long as they're the victim and they've not done anything wrong, we help them. We help people with, civic issues, a lot of civic issues, all kinds of civic problems that they're facing with the corporation and other authorities in and around the city. We help a lot of women, with all the like women specific crimes that happen to them. That's a big part of what we do. And additionally, we also like help people out with things like legal agreements when it comes to landlords, like house agreements, things like that, because a lot of people I know get stuck in very predatory and very horrible agreements with landlords. And so, we help out with that as well. We are very soon starting a legal cell to give people 24/7 legal assistance as much as possible. Like at least during the working hours, we'll be able to do it to begin with, and then we can probably expand it to 24/7. And so if they're doing an agreement with a landlord, they can run it by us, and we will have somebody take a look at it and fix it for them, so that they don't get they don't have to sign something that is basically not fair to them. Then when it comes to employment agreements, we are very big on workers' rights, so workers' rights and like making sure that people are treated fairly by their workplaces. So, we are very much for that. So any employment contracts that they want to run by us, we are going to make sure that we help them out with that. If people are being treated unfairly at work, for example, if a woman faces sexual harassment, there's Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, POSH Act, basically, for women to be able to file their complaints with their companies and then get appropriate redressals for that. So we help a lot of women with such things, with POSH complaints and things to that effect. Additionally, we help with other things, like if a company is not clearing someone's FNF, they're not clearing their salary, or people are being fired for unfair reasons. We do whatever we can to help them out with that. And sexual harassment is not something that's limited to men. So POSH currently only applies to women, but we've had instances where even men suffered from sexual harassment at workplaces. And in those situations, we've done whatever we could to help them, and we've gotten some good outcomes, some good results from that as well. So
a lot of these also are very dependent on judicial process, right?
Yeah.
So you could only take it up till a point, and then after that, it basically has to
it's
go
in the
through
hands of the
process.
court. Yeah.
So you focus more on that earlier preface of what it takes to take something from help a person to get to that court.
Yes. So the thing is, obviously the initial process is the most daunting, because it's a series of procedures that need to be undertaken until you reach that point where, okay, now it's in the hands of the system, right? So if I had to describe it, it's like we offer a lot of support to make sure that the issue gets to that point where now it's kind of taking its own course. And we also make sure that we hold their hand and stay with them till the end of the problem. So we don't desert anybody. We're not like, okay, your FI is done now, we are done with you. Okay. It's not like that. We will be with them every step of the way. This is what I assure everybody, that, we help out. That if we are trying to help you right now, if we got your FIR done, it doesn't mean that's the end of it. Every police procedure that you're going to be a part of from this point onwards, we will be there with you. We'll be there to support you, guide you, and help you. If you need someone to come to the police station with you, come to court with you, we accompany people to court visits. Our volunteers go there, sit with them, just as a moral support, and also to guide them a little bit about what the procedure is, what they're expected to do. When they have to go, sometimes they have to identify the criminals. We are there with them when they're identifying the criminals. When they have to, do something like the spot verification, we are there with them to make sure that they can see that procedure through. When they have to submit their evidence, we are there with them to make sure that the procedure is done. All the procedures are followed properly. When they have to go to court, like I said, for their statement verification, we are there with them. When they have to go for their hearing, we are there with them. And even otherwise, if they're feeling low or something and they need mental health support, we will support them. We'll be there for them. We'll get them the therapy that they need, the therapist that they need, with specific requirements that they have. So until their case is over, everyone who comes to us, or until their problem is solved, they'll know that these guys are there with me.
Right.
So we don't do it as a professional service. We do it more as okay, we are here for you now.
Right.
We got you, and we together we've got this, like that.
Insane. How do you fund all of this?
So that's a question that I get asked quite a bit. And honestly, man, it's surprising. It'll be surprising to many people to hear how little, it actually costs to, do this. Because people might have an assumption that it will cost crores and crores of rupees to do this. And eventually it will, because I have to scale this up and we have to get more people working in. But the things I've done till now, they have cost a lot of money and they've drained most of my savings. But it has primarily been financed from my savings, because when I grew up, I wasn't somebody who was spending a lot of money. I just saved most of the money I had. I never smoked, drank, traveled, partied, nothing. So I don't judge anybody for doing all those things. It's that I didn't do those things. So I ended up saving quite a bit of my money. I spent very little for my needs. And so I had some savings. And I wasn't really a great financial planner. My only financial planning was to save. That's all. So, but whatever money I did save throughout my career, I just had it. And I'm very fortunate and lucky that my parents don't need me to finance them, or finance their expenses. I know a lot of people are in that situation where even if they don't have money for themselves, they have to find a way to fund their families and, send some money back home and things like that. I was fortunate enough, privileged enough to not have to do that. So I just saved all my money, and whatever money I saved, once I decided that this was something that I wanted to do permanently with my life, and I just pledged all of my own savings to it. And that's how it's been financed till now. And of course, our community has been supportive. There are some people who have been quite supportive, and they have also partially supported the cause so far. So I would say it's a 70-30-ish split, 70% of it being my own savings, and 30% being contributions from the people that have, very generously helped out. So there's that.
Interesting.
But it's not scalable. So, it's something that... So I think I was talking to you about this yesterday. When I started this in 2023, doing this full time, I thought to myself that I'm going to like I'll do this properly. Whatever I'm doing, I'll make sure I do this properly. I'll do this from an office which is properly furnished for this purpose. I will hire at least all the essential people that need to be there, and I will pay them salaries, and I will dedicate myself entirely to this, and I will put all my efforts into this. I'll put as many hours into this as required. And what I'm going to make sure is that I give it my 100% and show people that I'm giving it my 100%. And this whole thing is, it's very unique. What we do is very unique. You're not gonna, at least I don't know of anyone else that does it the way we do. So it's something I'm presenting to the society. Okay. It's a proof of concept that this can be done. This is something that can be done. This is a service that can exist. This is a facility that can exist. And if the society wants it, if people want it, then they're going to find a way to support it and, help me sustain it. And if not, then I'll consider it something that the society doesn't want right now. No ill feelings, no hard feelings towards anybody. They just don't want it right now. And if they don't want it, then I'll keep trying until my savings hit a certain lower threshold. And then I'll be like, okay, fine. I'm just going to wind everything up and continue living my life as a regular social worker and helping everybody I can in my own personal capacity. But if people find value in it, if they see that this is something that the society needs, then they're going to find a way to support it and fund it and help me take it forward and scale it up. So that's the stage we're at now. And it's been very encouraging. There have been a lot of people, even very kind people like yourself as well, who've helped me spread the word. People who have, come forward very generously to help with in various ways. There's people who volunteer their time here, who are just so dedicated, who show up every other day to, and they ask me like, what is it that is to be done today? So it's wonderful that people give their time to us. Then there are people who can't give their time, but they volunteer, they contribute monetarily or in some other way, so it's incredible the support that we've had so far. And I think we are very, even now, like financially, it's still kind of dicey, but I'm very hopeful. I think I'm very positive considering all the signs we've had so far that this is leading towards something much bigger. And hopefully not only are we going to be able to have a much better and bigger presence in Bangalore, like one of the things I want to do is to hire actual full-time lawyers to work out of our office. We have a few volunteers who help out from time to time, but I'd like to have actual 24/7 lawyers. So things like that, so I'm pretty sure we are right there on that trajectory where we are going to be able to scale up very well in Bangalore and also in other cities. So, it's on the right path.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
Right. Yesterday, when we were in your office, we noticed there's a giant poster of George Fernandez. And from everything that you've spoken yesterday and today, it comes to, I can't help but ignore that you're a big believer in socialism.
Mm-hmm.
It's from where your fundamentals really come.
Yes.
The teachings, the truest form, not probably what is implemented today by governments or others.
Mm-hmm.
What is your definition of socialism? How do you look at it?
Yes. So when someone says socialism, I think the academic response that most people will have to that is that it goes back to like Stalin, not our Tamil Nadu Mr. Stalin, Chief Minister, but Joseph Stalin of United Soviet States of Russia, USSR. So that socialism which they implemented was a very authoritarian socialism.
Right.
They basically decided what was right for the country, and then they went ahead and implemented whatever policy they had to achieve that in a sense. And that level of authoritarianism is not something that, I would ever sign up for. My view of socialism comes from the Indian version of socialism, which was, something that was introduced by a revolutionary thinker named Ram Manohar Lohia. And Ram Manohar Lohia was in Congress earlier, along with another great person called Jayaprakash Narayan. So you have JP Nagar in Bangalore, right?
Yeah.
It's named after Jayaprakash Narayan.
Right.
So Jayaprakash Narayan, Ram Manohar Lohia, these two people were in Congress. They were very close to Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru himself had a very sort of his own version of socialism. It's called Nehruvian socialism is how they refer to it. So he was a socialist himself, and he really liked these guys, and these guys liked him, and they had a little bit of a, like their own little thing going on in Congress. So within Congress, they had their own socialist, like a part of Congress was considered Congress Socialist Party, whatever, something like that. So they were together till independence. Then post-independence, they were like, okay, you do you, we'll do our own thing. So they established their own thing called the Socialist Party. And the Indian fundamentals of socialism are that the people of our country that are disadvantaged, that are at either at like a historical disadvantage or a cultural disadvantage, or some kind of a disadvantage in terms of like economically, financially disadvantaged. Anybody who's in that position where they need help, where they are not a part of our society equally, they don't have an equal opportunity or equal access to opportunities or an equal ability because of their circumstances to be able to access those opportunities. These people need to be given some kind of special support to bring them up. Okay. And my personal vision sort of extends beyond that a little bit to also see where there is inequality in terms of being able to access fundamental rights. Okay. So I consider that as something that is also a part of my personal sort of socialist understanding of the word socialism, like the understanding of the word socialism. So to put it into words, for example, there is somebody who is born in a caste that is, like a caste that is historically underprivileged, and they have been denied access to resources. And because of that, they are just not able to match, the other people. For instance, I mean, I can tell you very simply, like a very simple example. You put a student from a slum, who's from a historically underprivileged community, into a very, very good school. Okay. And there's another student from a family that has been historically privileged. And both the students study in the same. They are equal. They're literally equal when it comes to their mental capabilities and everything. There is no difference between them. But the student that comes from the underprivileged community, the historically disadvantaged community, this student, when both these students get homework, both of them go back home. The one who's at the disadvantage, that kid goes home. The mother's illiterate. She doesn't know anything. She doesn't know how to teach this kid. The father is out there working, and maybe he's also like partially illiterate or something like that. He doesn't have anybody in his entire society, in his entire like community who can teach him this homework, how to do this homework. And of course, he doesn't have the money to, because his parents have worked very hard to put him in that school, so they don't have the money to put him in a tuition class, for example, right? This kid's not gonna have a chance against the other kid. The other kid goes home, his mom's educated. His family's been educated since like 20 generations, they've always been educated. So his mother's gonna be like, okay, come here, I'll teach you this thing. The homework gets done. The kid's automatically like quickly at it. Like the first homework assignment is where the gap starts to build, right? And right from there, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And then you got this gulf that is just impossible for this person to come over. So what socialism supposed to do, I'm not saying it is doing that right now, but what it's supposed to do is to make sure that this little kid who is at some sort of a disadvantage culturally, in his community, he has access to resources to be able to cover that gap, to be able to bridge that gap and to be on the same footing as the other person.
Right.
A lot of people think of reservation, for example, as a very wrong thing. I personally think it was put in there for a reason, and those reasons still exist today. Now, whether it is solving those problems or not is the point that's debatable, but it exists for a reason. It's not like they put it in just to get votes. That's literally not it, because George Fernandez was somebody who was a big proponent of reservation in everything. And I mean, at least in government services and schools and educational opportunities like this. And they felt like it was a starting step to try to solve that problem. I don't think we've solved that problem yet. And reservation has helped, but it has not solved that problem. So I personally believe there's way more that can be done. So this is an example of socialism in action, that if, for example, for this kind of a student, if you had like something like, for example, the education should be free. The education should be at a level where the other kid you're not going to find the situation, by the way, where there's underprivileged kid that is in the same school as the privileged kid. The privileged kid is going to go to a private school in India and going to get a really high level of education compared to this child. This child is going to go into a government school because his parents have no other way to finance his education. And the government school is run at such a pathetic level that teachers are, again, same problem as the police, not paid enough, so there's not enough good people coming in there, and not enough good people teaching those students. And then unfortunately the students are simply not at the level that 2 kids in 9th standard, one from a private school, one in a government school. The government school kid cannot hold a candle to the private school kid. That's unfortunately in the same neighborhood. Both the kids grew up in Indiranagar or around Indiranagar. One was from a private school, one was from this school. They cannot compare to each other. The one in the private school is just eons better in terms of academic performance, in terms of how easily is he going to be able to, compete in competitive exams and get an admission. Even if you put a child who's come from a reservation background into a college, how do you think he's going to do in a job interview? Even if he gets that degree, how well is he going to do in the job interview? He's always going to be at a disadvantage compared to the other privileged child. That's why, a lot of our people talk about how at the top of the corporate sort of food chain, you've got only people from the upper castes. And no wonder, because they all come from these privileged backgrounds. So they are able to access those hierarchies and have that upward mobility. But these children, it's not that reservation is wrong. It's the fact that we are not bringing them up to that level, and then to just give them reservation, try to push them artificially is not solving the problem. I think reservation is great, but it's not solving the problem that it was put in the place for. Now, let's put it this way, okay? If you reserved certain seats for people from a lower, I don't think of it as lower or upper. I think of it as advantaged or disadvantaged. So from a disadvantaged sort of community, you had people, but you had seats reserved for those people. And then you sort of just made sure that those people could come in, okay? But those people are also academically at the same level as the people who are coming in from general category. But because you've reserved certain seats for them, that makes sure that these people have, access to that opportunity. Maybe at a reduced price, like you reduce the fees for them, So because they come from economically underprivileged backgrounds, they can actually access that resource that exists. Like if it costs a regular student 10 lakh rupees per year or 5 lakh rupees per year to study in IIT, then it should not cost that much for a person who's coming from an economically impoverished background, right? So that kind of access to opportunity is what my version of socialism, it's supposed to have. So schools need to be at the same level as private schools, government schools, or we should make sure that the government pays for the education of these children in private schools itself. If you are not capable as a government of running schools, then give it up, man. Forget it. Shut down all your schools or turn all your schools into private schools. Give them to DPS. I would say a school like Delhi Public School, every time Delhi Public School wants a license to run one school, they should also be told to run 4 government schools. You run 4 government schools or 3 government schools, and then you get the license to run one of your private schools, which you can use to make money. Because these trusts and organizations are literal businesses. Okay, so why not give back to the society for the purpose of education? This so-called philanthropic endeavor that you're doing, right, supposedly by registering an NGO. You're not paying any tax, so you might as well do something for the society, right? All these guys, most of them are not even private companies. They are literally educational trusts. And what is the point of a trust if it doesn't exactly do something for the society? So every time you need a license to run a school, run 2 or 3 government schools. Take up the license to run 3 government schools simultaneously and run them at the same level as your private school, right? That's one fundamental thing that I would like to do. So we need to bring our society up, and we need to bring so many people out of their disadvantaged positions that are historically put on them. And, that's what I've learned from reading Ram Manohar Lohia. Right. He was a big proponent of, Ram Manohar Lohia used to say that women are the most disadvantaged sect of our society. And he's right. Women historically have been so extremely discriminated against, and the so-called higher castes or upper castes that the more privileged a certain section of the society is, the worse the state of the women in that society is. So that's how it's been, and there's so much work that needs to be done now. They were trying to pass a bill in the parliament about reservation for women in when it comes to Lok Sabha elections. They were trying to, and I think in MLA elections also, Vidhan Sabha and Lok Sabha elections. I don't know what happened to that bill, but it doesn't seem to be having a great time.
Right.
And the people protesting it from the opposition, one of them is a woman. And I'm like, come on, man. Like,
It's also because those people are not seeing the disparity, right? They're in their own world or their own bubble and their own ecosystem where maybe that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think and I've seen this happen a lot in our circles where modern day tier 1, be it millennial or Gen Z, we have grown up in a world where we have learned to respect regardless of what gender you are. At least that's been our upbringing.
Yeah.
And that's not the case with older generations. It's not the case with marginalized sections of society.
Absolutely.
And when the topic does come up, which is obviously looking at things from a macro standpoint, the micro pockets get irritated.
And they're the most vocal ones.
Exactly, right?
Because they have access to technology and education, so they can express their opinion.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that plays a role too. I have another question to you, which is, I'm not a fan of socialism. And the reason for that is because it's heavily dependent on its administration.
Yes.
Right? And that comes down to individuals who are at the positions of, say, power or organization, whatever it might be, and they have to administer.
Mm-hmm.
The human nature, and at least in the world that we are in, and I keep every time I see, I'm not a fan of, for example, people having careers on OnlyFans, for example. But meritocracy is meritocracy. It works. That's market demand and supply rules apply, so it does. But every time I hear some example of that, and you see a lot of examples today in today's world, and I keep telling my friends and others, I'm saying we're in the Kali Yuga. That's the reason.
Absolutely,
it is what it is, right? But the reality is that there are so many, examples of why for example, I'm not a fan of socialism because it's so coming back to, it is dependent on system working itself, right?
Yeah.
The only way I see it happening, and I've said this a lot of times on different podcasts, is that if you have a scenario like, if you watch DC, Superman's planet was run by Brainiac, an AI, for example, right? Which then didn't, obviously, which went wrong there. But the point is, it doesn't discriminate and everything works in a systematic format. But that takes away the essence of what is human.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Darwinism, it talks about survival of the fittest. And then I always draw parallel to capitalism from there, because it is built on that basis. But obviously, I think if you compare the starting point, right, that's where the disparity again comes in. Because the ones who thrive in capitalism, most often than not, are the ones
who are starting at 90 meters in a 100-meter race. Maybe or not 90, but 50, somewhere. 40, I agree, it's not the same starting point. There's people who are starting way before the starting line.
For sure.
Disadvantage. That's what I say.
Exactly. And unfortunately, this is the state of the world.
Yeah. Particularly our country.
Sure, right?
Yeah.
Is capitalism ever an answer?
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So my thoughts on capitalism are that, see, like you said, you answered the question like in part yourself, because the starting point is not the same. See, our country, and I think humanity in general, has to really be focused on bringing everyone up to at least the same starting point, right? So I think as long as if there's a free market, like a truly free market for business, for, people to come in and have an equal opportunity when it comes to starting a business and trying to earn money and doing something for their families, I think it's great. I think less government regulation is great. I can take something good from libertarian philosophy. I can take something good from capitalism, and I can take something good from socialism as well. Why I lean more towards socialism personally is I think the unique situation in our country warrants more socialism. A very, very highly developed country, let's say like a European country, Western European country, maybe socialism from a benefits perspective, like making sure everyone has access to basic facilities, that kind of socialism is what is probably relevant for them. Like even if you don't have a job, you're not just going to starve in those countries, because the government's going to pay you something to keep you afloat, as long as you can prove that you're making an effort to actually get a job, right? Like that's how welfare works in those countries. So it's different for different countries. Our country in particular, the version of socialism that we require is to bring a lot of people out from being in those disadvantaged positions that they have found themselves in since birth. And that's why I think, socialism is necessary for our country. And it's something that, unfortunately, by 75 years, I think we should have been done with socialism, honestly speaking. I think at this point, we should have been done with it if things were done efficiently. There's a reason why the economic crisis of the early 90s happened, because the system, like you said, was simply not efficient enough. A lot of the money that was meant for social socialist initiatives went into corruption, went into the wrong hands, and went into government offices and politicians filling their pockets. That's why our country sunk into a deep recession, and in such a pathetic place where Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh had to, rest in peace, Manmohan Singh just passed away. Like, both of them had to work hard to bring it. Yeah. They had to literally, unfortunately, I feel like that is the position we were cornered into, where we had to liberalize our economy. It wasn't something we wanted to do. We wanted our country to have its own people, building industries, building companies, more, indigenous businesses, more of our people having the opportunities to excel in business in our country. But they had to bring in money from abroad because we were bankrupt essentially, right? Like, we had nothing left. So
it's also a reflection that maybe we didn't have the skill to run socialism, right?
Absolutely. And we didn't have the systems. Yeah. We didn't have the political sort of expertise to do anything. And the other problem was that whole decade was such a decade of uncertainty in India. Like, if the last very stable government that we had was, that starting from the birth of this new country of India since 1947, our country was in so many wars and so many geopolitical situations. Like, if you think about it, right at the beginning, you had this extremely heavy problem, like this huge blow to the country where, it was divided into basically 3 land masses, 2 of them being Pakistan and 1 India, right? So right away, you had this huge blow to the country. Then after that, you had a war with Pakistan right after that. Then you had another war with Pakistan. Then you had a border dispute in the war with China, which we lost like very badly. Then we had another war with Pakistan, and then there was that whole war in 1971 about Bangladesh, the whole Bangladesh situation where Bangladesh was finally liberated. And, so the country just went through so much turmoil and so many wars. And then you had the emergency, which was more like an internal problem, right? It was like very close to being a civil war type of situation had Indira Gandhi not like taken it out. Then you had a new government coming in of all inexperienced people who had no idea how to run a government. Yeah. And unfortunately, they formed a coalition. It wasn't really a coalition. It was more everybody joined one party, and they won. And the country gave them the mandate, but they couldn't sustain it. In 2 years, they fell apart. And then you had another political crisis. Then Indira Gandhi came, and then there was that whole Khalistan problem that Pakistan started, and you had that whole issue going on in this country. Then, of course, Indira Gandhi was shot. Your prime minister is, no more. And then you had Rajiv Gandhi come in as a completely inexperienced man, had no idea what to do. He was never the one who was primed or groomed for politics. His brother was, who had also unfortunately passed away in a helicopter crash, right? So he comes in and he knows nothing. So it takes him a while to understand what's going on. Then you have the whole LTTE problem happening in this country, right? Like, it's just so many ups and downs up until that Manmohan Singh Narasimha Rao like flashpoint. And it's like, we have gone through so much crap that we have exhausted ourselves. So what do we do now? So let's bring in, so you have to sort of think about what all stuff the country went through as well. It didn't really have a period of stability at all for longer than like 3-4 years at a time. Right. And it was always like coming back from something. You think about Europe, man, these guys, like, what did they even, like, they had World War I, which they call World War I because that's their world. Okay. So the world wasn't exactly fighting in World War I. Those guys were fighting in Europe, but we call it World War, right? And then World War II was more of a world war, kind of, like, because some more countries got involved. But they had just those wars. You think about it, what other wars have happened in Europe since World War II? So they've had these long periods of stability where they have had the opportunity to build their countries. They've had the opportunity to build their societies, to build their cities, to build their systems. We've been in a constant state of, unrest, turmoil, inner turmoil. So many prime ministers changed between 1977 and, let's say, until Atal Bihari Vajpayee came. Like, it was like a new prime minister every couple of years or every year. It was such a horrible state of affairs at that time. So Rajiv Gandhi, of course, had a mandate for a long time. He won more than 400 seats, which was insane. But, other than that, there wasn't enough political stability or any kind of stability
until
in this country.
Now?
Now, yeah, I think India's finally had a breather since the past now 20 plus years where, we had Manmohan Singh, very decent man, very good person. He was the prime minister for 10 years. That was stability. And when there was stability, the first sort of byproduct of that stability that happened is that people were like, okay, fine. And then lots of scams started to happen.
Corruption.
Lots of incredible amount of corruption. India Against Corruption movement happened at the time, which was a very pro-India movement. I really like that thing about that, because that movement was about fixing India. That was about sorting India's problems out. Then you had BJP. Now BJP has been around for more than 10 years, So India has finally had a breather from all its issues, all its at least instability issues. Now we have a very stable country.
Don't you think a lot of this genesis was the liberalization in 92?
I would say it's more our democracy maturing, Of course, like when people have money and they have like more of an income, they're not as agitated as they otherwise would be about different things. But I feel like the country sort of matured, over a period of time about how things are to be done politically. I think the whole country started to understand, like in terms of like Lok Sabha, for example, the central government, that they need to vote for the country and not for their own area, and it started to become more and more clear to people what each election was about. And I think that sort of political maturity and the emergence of a strong opposition and not a single one-party system. Like earlier, we only had Congress as the one big large party, and the opposition was always a coalition. So I think the emergence of BJP as like one large political force all over the country, and then Congress as one large political force all over the country. I think a lot of small like parties also merged into these parties, and they became two people that you can choose from. I personally don't think it's great for democracy to only have two viable options. Yeah, but at least it gave us stability. So it's either going to be Congress or it's going to be BJP. But whoever it is, at least they're going to be around. They're going to stick around because they're large enough to not be toppled over by, some disturbances or some differences of opinion. So I think that is how our democracy matured. And of course, like, India never really got close to having any kind of a civil war or internal unrest or military coup type of situation. Never. It'll never happen because our country is just, our people are not like that. This country, the way it runs is not like that. People are very law abiding. People are very like respectful of authority. So unlike our neighbors, Pakistan, which have another level of unrest. Now I can sympathize with Pakistan also, right? Like not Pakistan as a country, but like people of Pakistan. They've had absolutely no stability. If I'm talking about ours instability, look at their instability.
Big problem.
So
and it hurts you as a country to have an instability in a neighbor, right?
It's
a big problem too.
That too, because that led to cross-border terrorism here, infiltrations here, so many terrorist attacks. Like the whole term of Manmohan Singh, unfortunately, was marred by these terrorist attacks, man, all over the place. So even that was actually unstable, honestly speaking. 2014 onwards, like it's been relatively stable, touch wood. And I don't care who is at the helm, man, as long as things are stable and the country can peacefully. Look at Sensex, man, okay? You think about the stock market. Whatever I said, you look at the Sensex, it obviously reacts to all of those things, right? Our stock market really only started to peak once the investors realized, okay, this is a country that's stable enough to invest in.
Correct.
Right? So it affects the economy. It affects the money that goes into.
I also think that actually helped stabilize the instability too, which is about, I think, policymakers and I think people in power look at it and say, oh, we are in a right direction.
Yes.
We are growing. Let's not upset it by, for example, getting into wars, reacting irrationally. So that thought is also there. And I think that's helped.
Yes.
Which I think is due to capitalism.
I mean, definitely capital is what the world runs on. There is no denying that. I think even Marx acknowledged that, when he wrote Das Kapital, like it's all about capital, but then his views were about how capital is distributed, right? And how it's regulated. But the point is, you cannot deny capital. You cannot say that money is not necessary to run things. It's absolutely the currency of the world. That's what you use to buy stuff and build things. But I think our country has been in a very disadvantaged position relative to the rest of the world. People are so condescending when it comes to India, especially Indian people. And they're like, this country, nothing can happen, all that. Bro, look at the amount of crap our country has been through. And they compare us with something like Japan or Singapore. How many wars has Singapore fought, man? Okay. How many actual wars has Singapore fought? Like they give the example of this dude came and became the Prime Minister of Singapore and turned everything around. Yeah, sure, he turned everything around. But how many times did inner political turmoil happen? How many times were was a country carved out of Singapore. How many times were border skirmishes happening? How many times were internal political unrests happening? How many times did you have like insane economic crises? How many times did you have like an emergency imposed in Singapore due to political reasons? None. Zero. Singapore has enjoyed a totally stable time since its independence till now. That's why they've grown. You cannot grow if there's something or the other going on. And India, man, is a problem for the world, honestly speaking. Like India as a country is very inconvenient for everybody else because the West has its own system. They want to be the overlords of the whole world. Okay. US and its allies, they want to control the entire world. And like countries like China and India are extremely inconvenient for them because these are the people who are just not, they were never in their plans. They never really thought about these countries ever becoming powerful. So particularly India is a country that speaks English. So it can compete with them head on at everything that they do. India is very rich in natural resources. It has everything that it needs to, do great things and to really outdo them. Historically even, India is a land of rivers. India is a land of extremely rich, areable soil, right? Like the crops that grow here, the amount of yield that you get from a field compared to a field in Europe is just, you can't compare it. Indian fields are way better, because of the plains, because of the rivers, naturally India is such a luscious, like green, lovely country. And apart from that, the general population of India, the people of India are such a hardy people, they'll survive under any kind of environment. Like you get a white person working manual labor in India for one day, so it's going to be in the hospital the next day. They're not going to be able to take the kind of conditions that an Indian person can. And I'm talking about any Indian person, North Indian, South Indian, East Indian, Northeast Indian, everybody. And the culture of India, I mean, of course, there's a lot of things that can be said negatively about that, but there's at least, some kind of respect for authority. There's a respect for the law. There's so many good traits of a good civilization in this country. So there's so many advantages that this country has. And there is some kind of a vested interest in keeping this country unstable. So it cannot progress and become a competitor to these people for international dominance.
Right.
So they have had their own interest, man. I think it was Jimmy Carter or somebody who called Indira Gandhi the B word, right? Like someone I think it was Carter or somebody, Nixon or Carter, one of them. And they called Indira Gandhi that because she was very inconvenient. What a great lady Indira Gandhi, man. Honestly, besides like the emergency really destroyed her legacy because that was something pathetic that she did. But apart from that, what a great lady. She like shook up the entire world. She carved out an entire new nation and stabilized it. Not only did she carve it out, she stabilized it. Now nobody questions the Bangladesh as a country anymore because of what she did and how she did it. You think about Palestine and Israel still fighting over that, the division of territory, right? We have no such problem in Bangladesh. So, I think Indians need to realize that you are up against everybody, and everybody has vested interest in making sure that you as a country don't succeed. They think they're going to go to another country and build a great life for themselves. Sure, maybe one generation, and then what happens next? Think about what's happening in Europe now. All the right-wing governments are coming into every single country and they're all anti-immigration. Right now, you think they're against the Arabs and the Syrians and the war refugees that are coming in. You're the next target. See what started happening in US right now. Like the amount of racism that is now spilling out on the internet, it's just ridiculous, man. I mean, is that the environment you want to raise your kids in? Would you rather raise your kids in a country where they at least are respected for being a person of that country? First grade treatment for, at least as an Indian in India, you are the citizen, you are the person of this country. Their 4th, 5th, 6th grade citizen, and it gets worse every time another new government comes in. So what kind of a future are you setting up for your kids? Like a future of no self-respect? What is it?
It's also down to, I think, the problems of the past, which, each government comes in and does policies, then the reaction to it is when that government is out and the next government is in. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But I think that's just the way the world works, unfortunately.
Yeah. But thankfully, we've had more stability now. Yeah. I think we as a democracy have matured in that sense.
For sure.
We are giving people more chances. We are...
I think it's our nature. Just our history that traces not for now, but maybe 4,000, 5,000 years ago. You spoke about Mahabharata in the beginning. I think the cultural unity comes from that culture, right? That form of religion or whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't call it just religion, but I think it's a way of life.
Yeah, way of life.
And
Culturally,
the values and the principles set in from there.
Absolutely. Like culturally, we were never a warring nation.
Yeah.
We were never a barbaric nation.
Absolutely.
Of course, we were not very nice to our own people, a lot of our own people. But at the same time, we never went out of our way to disturb anybody else. That was never our thing. And even when we have done that, for example, I would like to bring up the example of Rajendra Chola, who's my most favorite king of all time, right? The Tamil Chola king, Rajendra Chola. He only went and conquered. So he's
Southeast.
the king. Yeah, of course, man.
Went across the seas.
Love that.
Yeah, incredible.
I love that. And he did that only because they were disrespecting him in terms of trade policies, disrespecting his kingdom, and he was like, okay, I've had enough and it's time to do something about this. Like, he didn't just go in there for pleasure, for conquest. He went in there because he realized that it's a big enough problem that has to be dealt with in this manner. What a king Rajendra Chola, man. That could be a whole podcast.
For sure.
Yeah.
This has been incredible, but I want to ask you, for those few people who are watching this, who want to be part of your foundation, who want to come and volunteer, help you fight these causes, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah.
What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so, I just want to give a little context to that. Like, I had been doing a lot of social work as on the side when I was working, and I'd been volunteering for a lot of organizations. Like, I can trace it back to like 2009, 2010, since when I started volunteering. And I did that for a while, and I built up my contacts and connections everywhere in Ahmedabad, Mumbai. When I came to Bangalore, I met a lot of great people through my volunteering. And because of that, I had the confidence and, this ability to be able to help others, because I know a lot of people and I know a lot of things about the system that I could use to help people. And that's why I blew up so much on Reddit, because particularly during the post-COVID time when people started to return to Bangalore was when, the amount of crimes that started happening to the people who were returning, they just went way high, because for 2 years, the criminals were all out of jobs. They had nobody to rob and nobody to fleece. So when the restrictions were lifted, people were returning to Bangalore, and even the Bangaloreans were coming out of their homes. That's when the crime started to go up, and a lot of people needed support, needed help. And I came in and I started to help people out, in my own capacity. And all it took was one person, with the right kind of initiative, the right kind of mindset to really start to give people hope that there is something out there. There's someone out there who will come through and help us out if needed. And with that, faith and trust is how people started to reach out to me. And this thing went from just a few people contacting me every day to today, hundreds of cases coming to Broseph Foundation and, to me all the time, like every single day of the year. Like, we work 365 days. There's no day offs. There's no breaks, except for the staff. They get their labor rights. But, apart from that, like me personally, I work 365 days. So, all it took was some initiative from one person to set things right. And now we are quite a formidable force. I like to imagine, at least when it comes to giving people hope. I don't want to claim that I have any other power than that. So I think if someone wants to volunteer, as long as they have the mindset to, do that, to be able to participate in this mission of, giving people hope and coming good on that hope that you're giving them, not just like a fake or false or empty hope. We'll actually come through, and they want to do this. They want to help out. So they can head over to broseph.in. We've put up some links on there where they can, sign up, and we've got a few forms they can fill out and join us. They can volunteer at our HQ. That's one of the best ways to volunteer. If you can come in on a weekday, on a weekend, and spend some of your time here, we'd be very happy to have you. Everyone that comes in to volunteer, we prepare lunch and dinner for them. So it's free of course. Like, and we all sit together and have a meal, and we talk about all these things that we spoke about on the podcast and about how to solve people's issues. We have a beautiful library that I'm, slowly building, like one book at a time. And it has a lot of legal books, a lot of law books. Legal and law, basically what's in the law, and then things about law. Then we have books about history, books about people's movements. I try to keep fiction as less as possible, but we have a lot of non-fiction, a lot of interesting things, about history. You can read and learn so much about, our country and its systems and how to solve problems. We have books about PILs, we have books about RTIs, we have books about, how to file an FIR, how to pursue cases with the police. We have books about land laws, everything you can imagine. We are constantly upgrading it. Then we have this beautiful and wonderful community now in 4 cities, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Chennai. In Bangalore alone, we have 11,000 volunteers. And we have an exclusive women's group called Abakka Brigade, which is named after Rani Abakka Chowta of Ulal, Karnataka, the coastal Karnataka. So legendary warrior queen. And that's, the kind of spirit we want to also help inspire more women with. So Abakka Brigade is our women's only group. And there's a form for that as well that anyone who wants to join can fill. We have quite a few ways for people to get in touch and get involved. So volunteer at the HQ, join Abakka Brigade, or they can even sign up to be in their own chapters in their own areas. So because we have quite a few chapters all over Bangalore, 12 at last count, so they can join any of those chapters and contribute more towards their local issues, become a coordinator, something like that. So all the details are available on our website, broseph.in. And, just hoping that, through the podcast, we'll be able to reach out to more people, connect with more people, and, turn this into a bigger movement, because we really need more people to fix our country in the truest sense. So there's that.
Right. Great. Thanks a lot. I can see your phone's been buzzing all through. You have so many cases and things to attend to. I'm so glad you took time out.
It forwards to another number, so people are not going unanswered, thankfully.
Great. This is a delight. I hope we do more and we'll go deeper into things that we couldn't get into today.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to. This was a wonderful experience, and I thank you as well, for being here, and your entire staff for making this possible. This was truly a good conversation, because I felt like, you were actually really interested in the topic. So I really appreciate that about you, that you made a genuine effort to understand and have a conversation, and I really appreciate it. And hopefully, we can do this again and talk
definitely.
About more
We're anyway
things.
close by, not too far.
Of course.
Right.
Okay. Thank you so much, man. Really, really appreciate it.